Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Mormon Stories Podcast. I am your host for today, John DeLynn. It is November 14th, 2023, and I'm here with my partner in truth and righteousness, Margie. Hey, Margie.
Hey.
And we're super excited for today's interview. This is someone we've wanted to interview for a long, long time. Her name is Amanda Rae, spelled R-A-E. Hey, Amanda.
Hello.
For those who have no idea who Amanda is, there are several, let's just say, fundamentalist schisms of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints or the Mormon Church. We have covered, for example, the FLDS schism, the fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We've also covered the Allred group here on Mormon Stories with Vance and Lance Allred. One of the major fundamentalist polygamous schisms that we have not covered yet on Mormon Stories is a group called the Kingston. I know them as the Kingston Group. Mm-hmm. And it's a particularly intense polygamous offshoot.
Yeah.
And Amanda hails from the Kingston Group.
I'm the first one. Sorry.
What's that?
I'm the first Kingston one you've had on your...
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And we'll get into what that is and what that means in just a second. But Amanda has her own YouTube channel at Amanda Rae, R-A-E. She has also collaborated a lot with Shalise on Cults to Consciousness and with our friends at Growing Up in Polygamy. But Amanda Rae, we're super excited to have you on.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. I'm excited.
Yeah. So I guess if we were to give people who have no idea anything about the Kingstons or you, just to give them a heads up of kind of like some main themes we'll be covering in your story, what would you say?
I can give a little background of the Kingston Group. I'm going to say it's the order because when I talk about my story, I'm going to say the order a lot because we ourselves called each other order members or the order, United Order, whatever. So that's another term for it. But yeah, if I could give a little rundown of how the order started and what the order is unlike all those other branch off of Mormonism, we were the true church of the Lord.
Of course.
But the one thing that we had that none of the other churches had that the Mormon church fell away from was we believed in consecration and polygamy, which we believed that the Mormons fell away from. And we are going to carry those true teachings to the latter days, right? So it was in 1935 when the order started, and originally it wasn't even a church. It was just a co-op, the Davis County Co-op.
So for those who don't know Utah or have never been Mormon, where's Davis County?
I don't even know. Where is that?
North of Salt Lake.
It's like Bountiful-ish?
Kind of the Ogden, Bountiful, Layton area. Is that right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I always thought Davis County was, because I know it is Bountiful area, but yeah, they all kind of just huddled together in that area, and they were very poor at the time, right? This was after the Great Depression, so they were kind of huddling together. And by I want to say the 1980s, it started to be a religion, and they wanted to. I hear mixed stories because I talked to a lot of people who were older generation members, but they claimed that they wanted that tax write-off. Because you'll hear with my story, the very common thing that comes out in this group is bleeding the beast, which is taking advantage of the government. So then they become a church, but they originally started in 1935 when Brother Elden started the order, the work of the Lord.
Does he have a last name? Is that
Elden
a first
Kingston.
name?
Yep,
What?
the Kingston Group.
Elden Kingston is the founder.
Yep.
1935.
Yep.
He starts this co-op in Davis County, which is somewhere between Salt Lake and Brigham City, north of Salt Lake. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And it originally was that all religions can join. Like, you don't have to be a specific belief, but the common thing was it was a lot of Mormons and people that still believed in polygamy. So then that became the thing because he himself had, I believe, 4 or 5 wives, Elden. So polygamy became the big thing. But at that time, he did not believe in incest marriages. He did not believe in underage marriages until my grandpa became the leader. And then it all went to shit.
Okay.
But
yeah. And so for today, we're not sure if we're going to do this in one part or two, but we're going to be talking about the history of the Kingstons. We're going to be talking about Amanda's upbringing as a member of the order. Mm-hmm. And then we'll be talking about what went wrong in terms of, or right in terms of her leaving the order, and then kind of how she's picking up the pieces today.
Rebuilt. Yeah.
rebuild, right? Okay. Yeah, so this may be one part, or we may break it out into two.
Sorry, if you ask me about the history, there's so much, and I because I do my YouTube channel and I interview a lot of different people who give me the information. So I'm like, I try to make sure I get all the information as accurate as possible. So just tell me if I'm telling you too much.
Oh, okay. So this guy, who started it, his name again is
Elden Kingston.
Elden, and do you know how long he was kind of in charge?
Yeah. So. The crazy thing is because they were so into saving money and consecrating, they didn't really believe in doctors. So he died very young at the age of, I believe, 35 or 30. He wasn't even in his 40s. He was very young, had four wives, I think 5, but died early in his 30s. He was only, so like you think about it, it was 1935, and I believe he died in the, I want to say the 40s. 40s, 50s? We could Google it, actually. But, so yeah, very young. He wasn't a leader for very long. And he died because they didn't believe in taking him to the doctors. They didn't think he was going to die. They actually thought that when he died, he was going to be resurrected. So they kept his body in a bathtub.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh. Yeah, that's how they really believed that he spoke for God. He was God's chosen person. So he only ran that place for a while. And whenever you talk to older generation order members, they always talk about how Brother Elden really knew because he didn't believe in the incest marriages and it was better back then, blah, blah, blah. I believe there was probably issues too back then. It's the fact that they believed that he was going to be resurrected, left his body in a bathtub. I think there were some screws loose, I don't know. or they weren't using their critical thinking. But you'll hear people saying that Elden was better than the next leader, who was my grandpa, Ortell. So
was he also a Kingston?
Yep, Ortell Kingston. So
how is he related to Elden?
I want to say he's Elden's brother. Half-brother.
Okay.
From a different mom.
Okay.
I want to say that. But yeah, they are related.
Okay.
So I want to say brothers.
Same last name.
Kingstons, yep.
And your grandpa's name again was?
Ortell Kingston.
Ortell. How do you spell that?
Ortell.
Ortell.
Yeah.
Okay. Was there a power? Do you know if there's a power struggle, or if it was just obvious he was the next in line?
That one's a little iffy because it was back then. But I can tell you there becomes a power struggle in the next leadership.
Okay.
We'll talk about that in a second. But so Ortell becomes the leader. Everyone's still in shock that Elden died. There were people that believed that, they still should be believing in Elden's teachings. There were women who wanted to still be married to Elden, but he died so young, so they got married in proxy to Ortell. Does you know what that means?
So Ortell took on Elden's wives?
Yeah.
Okay.
Kind of as Elden, but it's Ortell.
Exactly. So they will be returned to Ortell or to Elden. They marry Ortell, but we're not going to be together in the afterlife. You're just basically a surrogate for my children that are Elden's children. Yeah, it was so weird.
Well, that's how Joseph Smith worked. When Joseph Smith died, his wives became temporary wives of other top church leaders.
Wow.
But the understanding was that when they went to heaven, they'd be Joseph's.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, they'd be Brighams or Hebers.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what Joseph Smith did.
So
Mark, you look stunned.
I know.
Isn't that so weird?
You didn't know that?
That stunned me because one of the wives never even married Elden. Like on his deathbed, she wanted to be married to him, but he died. He had penile cancer. And then she told Ortell, like, you need to marry me as proxy to Elden. And she's going to be with Elden. But Ortell, this is just stories from what I hear, the family that was around him. Ortell didn't treat those wives as well because they weren't his wives. They were Elden's wives. Such a weird, it's like fairy tale land when I talk about it. I'm like, I can't believe that I came from that. Yeah. But so Ortell becomes a leader. He had 14 wives, and this is when it begins incest in the order. His first wife was his own niece. And I don't know if people questioned that or because he was the leader, he just got to do whatever he wanted. But his first wife, he got married to her like in his 30s, which is also weird because why was he so old getting married? Old for that standard. But he marries his niece and could never, ever have a child live because of the incest. And so he was really upset about that. But he even still marries more of her sisters. Tries to have kids with, I think he had 3 or 4 of his own nieces that he married. And only one of them could actually have children. And I think all of those children have some type of issue due to the incest. And then he also married 2 half-sisters. I have a whole video on this where I have all the notes. So if I'm saying it wrong, I don't know if you can link that video somehow, but I have a whole video where I did all my research. I believe he married 2 half-sisters and 4 nieces. But I might be wrong. It's in that area, though.
Yeah. Okay. So it says I'm reading Wikipedia. So Ortell was the son of Charles Kingston, who was just a member.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So brothers to Eldon, because Eldon's father's also Charles. So yep, Ortell and Eldon are brothers.
Okay. Yeah. So he took over in 1948 when Eldon died of cancer. Mm-hmm. He became the leader of the Davis County Co-op, and he lived until Ortell lived until 1987. Mm-hmm. Now, you were born what year?
95. So I actually never met him.
So you never knew your grandpa, but he was your grandpa.
Yep. My dad's dad.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But you didn't know him. Mm-mm. Okay. Okay. So what else did you want to tell us about?
I really like to hyper focus on that. That's where the incest starts. I'm not 100% sure if he like the full story, but I know that they believe in direction. So he must have been directed to marry his first wife, which is his niece. And then he married LaDonna, who is a very prominent part of the order. A lot of people believe LaDonna ran the order and ran Ortell because LaDonna's sons end up being the ones who run the order today. And everyone knew LaDonna was Ortell's favorite wife. Everyone knew, like LaDonna was known to, if another wife was in the front seat of the car with Ortell, she would open the door and yank the wife out. Like I heard stories like this all the time growing up. People knew LaDonna was the top bitch. So a lot of people will debate, was the order ran by Ortell or was it ran by LaDonna? So Ortell believes in the incest, believes in the direction, but gets very upset with the fact that he can't get these women pregnant or have these babies going to full term because of the incest. So he, I believe that the blood testing or the trying to figure out who can marry who started with Ortell. It definitely continued with Paul, though.
So go ahead. So then they start the blood tests kind of emerged to try to rectify the problem around not being able to have children with family members. So when Ortell has his reign, right? He has all these issues. He couldn't figure out what it was. He was getting, I hear stories of him doing testing on his own kids. Not 100% sure what exactly he did, but we do know that to this day, so Ortell dies, right? You said 1980, in the 80s. Mm-hmm. Then LaDonna wants her son to be the leader, Paul. This is where the riff comes in, though. Ortell's brother, Merlin, was supposed to be the leader. Everybody apparently knew that his brother was the next oldest, was supposed to take the leadership. But it didn't happen. All of a sudden, they gave the leadership to Paul, who is LaDonna's son. Not even her oldest son. There's a whole story on how that even happened. I don't know how much you want to get into that, but Paul becomes the leader and blood testing starts happening.
Can I read a little bit from Wikipedia? Just because I didn't know any of this, none of this.
Wow.
So it says throughout the 1940s and 50s, Utah carried out an extensive campaign of legislation, raids, and arrests in an attempt to break up plural families. Now I knew about that. Mm-hmm. But I think of that as mostly being FLDS. In like Colorado City, southern Utah kind of thing. For the Davis County Co-op, this culminated in a Davis County grand jury investigation in 1959 and 1960, described by the Ogden Standard Examiner as, quote, the polygamist hunting Davis County grand jury, close quote. This likely contributed to the cooperative associating mostly within themselves. So they became very insular, marrying within the group. And then it's got this word I've never heard before, including some consanguineous marriages.
What?
And I'm assuming that's incest.
Siblings, yeah.
I'm assuming that's a fancy word for incest because it means with blood.
Yeah.
So consanguineous marriages started happening. as a result of the state persecution or prosecution of the Davis County Co-op. In the late, in the late 1990s, some non-members and ex-members began claiming the practice stemmed from theories of genetic purification. So sort of some sort of white supremacy kind of thing.
So,
do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sorry. I that's why I kept trying to reference back to Ortell and his first wife, because my theory was always, oh, he's having direction that he needs to marry her, but also the blue blood. I should have remembered that. The blue blood is where they believe, Ortell believes, and the Kingstons believe that the Kingston bloodline is directly linked to Jesus Christ himself. So they need to keep that bloodline pure because of, the whole, you only breed in the 12 tribes of Israel. And that's also what supports their racism. You don't marry outside of that race. Yeah.
And that's something that I know that the Joseph Fielding Smith / Bruce R. McConkie family taught, that Joseph Smith was a blood descendant of Jesus, and that there was the pure blood of Jesus.
Yeah.
And thus Israel in the veins of the blood descendants of Joseph Smith. And the Book of Mormon, that's like the major theme of the Book of Mormon is the blood of Israel and Gentiles versus, the chosen.
Yeah.
And so people might think, well, that Kingston stuff with blood lineage is crazy. Absolutely tied to Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon and the Old Testament. Because the Old Testament, the Jews are God's chosen people, and it's all about the blood of Israel, right?
Right.
So,
yeah. So that's where and they get really, really hyper focused on that. It's almost like each leader that goes by, it gets worse and worse. They get very prejudiced. It's like a cult within a cult where you will never see a Kingston woman like me. I'm a Kingston woman, married down. That's what they call it, that you have to marry up because you're marrying for your place in heaven. So you have to, that bloodline's so righteous, right? So you have to marry a more Kingston man. The Kingston men can marry, non-Kingston or whatever, but the Kingston women are preserved for the Kingston men. They don't tell us this though.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
You can see very rarely a Kingston woman marrying non-Kingston, but either she had to leave to do that or she had to fight tooth and nail to be able to marry who she wanted.
So Kingston women were encouraged to marry Kingston men.
Yep.
To keep the blood pure.
And the most Kingston men.
But it's all based off of direction. So in the order, we're not allowed to hold hands before we're engaged or get married to our wedding day. So when we get direction on who we're supposed to marry, it's like a premonition from God. We have to talk to the parents, and then the parent, like the husband or the man, will come forward. It's a process of them coming forward, bearing their direction that they had from God, which I had that happen to me. But
we'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into that. But that's the whole process. And if the leader says no, then it's a no. And a lot of the times, like what I was saying with the blood testing, so there's someone in the order who is testing children to see which of Paul's kids can marry which of David's kids. And they're brothers. They're brothers' kids. And so they're blood testing David's kids and they're blood testing Paul's kids to see like which ones can marry each other to have the least defects. I don't even know if that's legal. Probably not. But because of this, because there's been so much marrying, and now at this point, we're not just first generation incest, okay? We're on to like now fourth generation. The man that I was supposed to marry, he is so inbred. His mom is his dad's half sister. His parents are siblings, okay? Which would make your mom your aunt and your dad your uncle, right? Because you're your dad's sister's kid. But he's infertile now. He cannot bear, get anyone pregnant.
Wow, I had no idea. I had no idea. And this is one of the three major polygamous groups you would mention within the Mormon context. And I had no idea about any of this. But let me read one more paragraph, just because I think it'll help inform a little bit of this discussion. It says Kingston, and when it says Kingston now, it's talking about John Ortell Kingston. It says Kingston taught his followers to, quote, seek their own direction when choosing who to marry. That's what you were just talking about. And to marry within the legal age of consent. Now, that sounds amazing. Legal age of consent. What could be wrong? Then it goes on to say, for many members, this meant choosing to marry just after reaching legal age, which of course is going to be 18, right? No. It goes on, which at times has been somewhat controversial. The legal age of consent in Utah has historically increased from 14 to 15, now to 16, with court approval in 2019. So prior to 2019, it was legal to get married in Utah at age 14 or 15. So that's kind of dark.
Yeah.
And so child
marriage. Oh yeah. All of my friends that I knew were married, betrothed, or engaged before even 16.
So 14, 15.
Oh yeah. And so a lot of the times what you would see is because they're so afraid of getting in trouble there's so many red flags, right? The incest, the underage marriages, the polygamy. So a lot of times they would either hop over to Idaho to get married, or they would have what they call a spiritual wedding. Then the woman would be like pregnant and having her first kid by the time they go and get their like legal wedding. And then obviously like my dad, he has 3 wives. You can't legally marry 3 people. So he legally marries the first wife, and then my mom is a spiritual wife.
And why Idaho? Was Idaho have even more lenient?
I think Idaho was lenient on the cousin marriages. I think a lot of cousins went to Idaho.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just finish this out. Plural relationships with anyone under 18 is prohibited. I guess that means now. I don't know.
Well, so there is a law with plural, and so they have been more careful about making sure the next wives are adults. But they've been really shady where they will legally divorce their first wife, who's like 20 something, to legally marry a teenager as the second wife, but legally the first wife. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay. And then it says, for decades, the cooperative has publicly joined with many others in speaking out against child bride marriages, and the DCCS has a policy encouraging its members to marry within the legal age of consent. In a recent lawsuit, defendants allege abuses occurred in some marriages in the group. Some defendants were as young as 16 when married, which is within the legal age of marriage in Utah. Okay, that's a little bit of the background.
Yeah, the DCC Society, Davis County Cooperative Society, they have their own website now, and they're claiming on there that they don't ever support underage. That you can go on there and see. Every time I read through them, I'm like, lies, lies, lie, lie, lie.
Right.
But it's just they're trying to cover themselves because they are under a lot of heat for so much incest, so much people are speaking out so much now, and they have to keep trying to. How are you going to do it? You're going to have to just keep lying.
Yeah, they're trying to like control the narrative.
Right.
Okay, so this John Ortell guy, he's your grandpa, right?
Yep.
And then who took over after Ortell?
Yeah, so when Ortell dies, then his second wife, LaDonna's son, Paul. Yeah.
So his second wife's son, Paul, takes over.
Right.
Did you know Paul?
Oh, yeah. Paul Kingston. I shook his hand. I have pictures with him.
Now, he wouldn't be your dad.
My dad's half brother, though.
So he's your uncle.
Right.
Or your half uncle?
Right.
Okay, so Paul takes over. Is there anything else we should talk about in terms of Kingston history before we jump into your story? Anything significant about Paul's reign?
Did he bring something in particular?
Was he known for?
Ortell did not.
Yeah, I think it was just mainly the blood testing, and he did get very into, and I can share this clip with you if you'd like. It's a recording of Paul talking about, because you imagine a polygamous cult is going to have a lot of old single married men, because all of these women are being given to these righteous men, so then all these non-worthy men are going to be single. So they're running low on women. You won't see very many single women at the age of like 20, right? They're all taken up. So,
oh wait, Paul's still alive.
Paul's still alive, yeah.
Is he still the leader?
He's still the leader.
Okay, so now when we talk about Paul, and I'm looking at a photo of him right now. Paul Elden Kingston is his name. He was born in 59, so he's 10 years older than me. So he's 64.
Yeah, he's pretty...
And he's been leading the Kingstons ever since your grandpa died, basically.
Yeah,
okay.
Basically.
Okay.
And, sorry, where I was going with that whole now there's all these like single men, and then like the oldest women that are single are like barely even 18, right? They're all getting married up really, really fast. So I have this recording of Paul talking about giving a sermon to the men, telling them how to impregnate their wives with female daughters, right? So like, get your wife pregnant so we can have more daughters because we need more girls in this community because we're running out.
Like how to have sex in a way where a female will come out?
Yep.
Like stand on your head? Like what's that?
Yeah, I have the recording if you want me to send it to you. I actually put it on YouTube, and they tried to take the video down. They tried to get YouTube to take that down.
What's the technique? Do you remember? Is it like have lots of lemon juice? Like it's got to be something like that.
It's probably something super weird, right? I'm trying to remember. It's got to be the timing that you're with your wife, and I think it has something to do with the position.
Yeah.
I'll give you the recording. I think you'll like it. Okay. You'll love it.
We'll have Julia include that in the show notes.
Yeah.
Okay. So they're running out of girls. That's always a big problem with polygamous groups.
Yeah. So Paul's been more known to like try to get more women, and then the blood testing, and trying to kind of control what's being born. But now there is also a lot of IVF. It's very hush hush, but it's because everyone's sterile. No one can get pregnant. So and I don't want to say how true this is, but I heard it from multiple sources in the order. There's a story where a wife could not get pregnant by her husband because he was sterile. They go to the order clinic, and they claimed that it was her husband's sperm they were giving her. In actuality, it was his brother's sperm that they knew could get her pregnant. And they basically lied to her, and she got pregnant by the brother. I heard this story multiple times from multiple people in the group. Don't know, I can't say like, I know for sure because I was there and I watched it happen, but I think there's a lot of stuff like that going down because they're so into procreating as fast as you can, so just get those babies out.
And it's like you have the sense, desperate times, desperate measures, right?
Right.
So Wikipedia says that Paul has accrued, he uses the word accrued, as many as 40 wives with up to 300 children.
Yeah.
Does that sound right?
So I know of 27. I don't know that there's 40. I feel like it would be hard for him to hide that. They would have to be like somehow spiritual, secretive wives, which that's kind of hard to hide when you're a leader, right? And you know everyone in the community. So I know for sure I can name 27 of his wives, which 2 are his sister. Wait. 2 are his sisters and 3 are his nieces.
Meaning half sisters or half nieces?
Sisters, yep. So sister from the same dad, different moms. So that means those children that he has with those women will only have 1 grandpa and 2 grandmas. So he himself
has engaged in the incestuous marriages.
Him and all of his brothers. All of his brothers, I believe, have married at least 1 half sister. At least 1.
So that sort of worked its way into the doctrine that somehow incestuous marriages are like important.
Yeah.
Like God wants it.
I feel like there had to have been some meeting that I obviously wasn't at because I wasn't born yet. There had to have been some type of talk where they expressed that it's important to marry within your bloodline, because when I look at that time frame of Paul getting married and all of his brothers getting married, my dad's in that group too. They all are married to a sibling. My dad's 3rd wife is his own half sister. And so he has 8 kids with his own half sister. Wow. And I didn't know this till I got older. And someone pointed to one of the kids in the family and said, "That's your brother." And I was like, "No, it's not." And then I find out later my dad is literally sleeping with his sister.
Wow.
In the name of the Lord, though, anything for Jesus.
Okay. Anything else about Kingston history or Paul before we jump into your story?
I think we might bounce back, but is that okay? if it's relevant.
When it's an order, so is it? Never Mormons won't know what the United Order is.
Okay.
I think of it as like socialism or communism, where money is pooled. Everybody feels like they're financially working for the group.
Do you want me to talk about the bank system?
Yeah, like the financial structure.
Okay.
If you want.
Yeah.
If you think that's important background.
I think it's a really big part of it. Because as I was saying in the beginning of this, the 2 main rules is polygamy and consecration, right? Consecration, they would always say the LDS church does not consecrate the way the Lord wants because they only do 10%, right?
Tithing, yeah.
Tithing.
Yeah.
We are the true church because we consecrate it all. So all of our money's in a bank. You do have an account, but you don't have like a card or a credit card. And if you want to get money out, you have to do what, like, they say call card line. You have to talk to someone, see if they can get the money for you. They can flat out say, nope, you can't get your money. And then you say, okay.
Really quickly, just so people understand, this isn't like weird tangential stuff. Joseph Smith established what was called the United Order. And Joseph Smith wanted all finances to be in common where he would control the finances. Now, it didn't work out so well. And at some point, either he or the Mormon church distanced themselves. But this United Order law of consecration stuff is absolutely core Mormon doctrine, originating with Joseph Smith.
Right.
So your leaders, your former leaders, would have every right to say that the Mormon church, the traditional LDS church of today, has strayed by not living the law of consecration or the United Order. Just so people don't think it's some fringe, weird thing that didn't start with Joseph Smith.
It stems from all of the teachings stem from Joseph Smith. I mean, maybe not the incest.
I'm not aware of any, Joseph Smith incest.
Yeah.
But he certainly married 14 and 15-year-olds.
Yeah.
And he certainly married sister pairs and mother-daughter pairs. Oh. I don't think that counts as incest.
Because technically he's not related.
Yeah, but he certainly married, he set a precedent of marrying mother-daughter pairs and sister pairs as, some of his 30-plus wives. Yeah. So I think that's a step towards incestual marriages, right? Right.
Yeah, so it is true. Then the consecration does come directly from that. And like I was saying with the original leader, Elden, it was originally like a storehouse. Everyone put their stuff in the storehouse and then you would share it, right? And that's how they kind of survived in that time because it was after the Great Depression. But then it's evolved into Paul's time now where Paul seems to have all the money. He seems to have homes with pools in them. And your neighbor over there is eating out of the trash. Like there's a very big discrepancy. You're not allowed to own your own home. It's very common to see someone work their entire life to pay for this home. And then the order, when they die, the order takes it and then their son will buy it back from the order. So it's like recycling this property over and over and over and over because it's the Lord's property. But really, who's getting the money? They're not sending it to Jesus. Yeah. It's going straight to Paul.
Right. And that's how so many religions work is just the leaders get rich. They get the sex, it's power, sex, and money, right?
Right.
They have the power. They have all the sex they want with as many women as they want, and they have the money.
Right.
It is striking to me, though, when you're describing this idea of having to call a bank to see if you can get your money.
Your own money.
Yeah, it's your own money.
There is something to it being current day that is just, it is like an alternate reality in a way. Looking back in time, it's still disturbing or kind of to look at Joseph Smith and to see, but to have it existing in the current day, it's extremely confronting and striking that it can work.
I would always get so upset whenever any Mormons would, because I do my YouTube channel, and Mormons would get a little triggered and say well, we didn't believe that. Why are you saying that that's Mormon teaching? I'm like, we live the true teachings of Joseph Smith. Yeah. This is what Joseph Smith was doing.
Yes.
Yeah, what traditional Latter-day Saints don't understand is that many, many, many mainstream members of the LDS Church defect either secretly or openly to fundamentalism because they study things like the Journal of Discourses, Brigham Young's teachings, John Taylor's teachings, and they conclude, or Joseph Smith's teachings, they conclude, we're not living the true Mormonism. We've got a defect. So one of my very first polygamous interview of all time was a woman named Ann Wilde, who grew up a mainstream Mormon, learned in study groups as a temple married Latter-day Saint, married a man in the temple, in the LA temple, I believe, was actually a secretary to Ernest Wilkinson at BYU, learned about polygamy. As I understand it, her husband didn't want to practice it, so she divorced her husband so she could marry a polygamist.
Wow.
She married Ogden Kraut, who was a famous polygamist in the 60s and 70s and 80s, and raised her children from Ogden Kraut and from her first husband, I'm assuming, in a mainstream Latter-day Saint church. So to her home ward, a regular Sandy LDS ward, she was just a divorced single mom raising kids. But actually, she was a polygamous living the true law, but still attending the traditional Mormon church. Wow. And that's all over Utah. That's all over Utah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Is that surprising you?
It surprises me because Mormons have tried so hard to not have any polygamists be affiliated.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, it's those crazy people down in southern Utah, right?
Yeah. But in reality, there's so much. And I honestly believe some of our group was going to LDS Church to take notes and bring them back.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure because there were some teachings that I was like, how did we learn these teachings that were being taught simultaneously in the LDS Church?
Yeah.
Like current stuff. So I think that they take pieces of it. But they are always staying true to, and they kind of act like, you know, those high schools that are like rivals. They act like that with the Mormon Church. Like they're the worst, we're the best. And they would talk about how the temple, the Salt Lake City temple, which that's where Jesus is going to come back in, right?
It depends on who you ask.
That's true. Yeah. But they said that as soon as the LDS Church stopped living polygamy, that temple went from white to gray. And they would take us on little field trips and show us how you Mormons turned away from the truth. And
God turned the temple gray, the Salt Lake temple gray.
I remember as a kid thinking, whoa, it's true. But I never saw it before it was gray. Maybe it was always gray.
Interesting.
But that is crazy, though, to think that was she still a polygamist at the time?
She's still alive. And her husband died, but she still believes in polygamy. Yeah. She's a great person, by the way. She's super smart, really kind, thoughtful. Yeah.
Wow.
Just believes. What city is and was Paul and the Kingston Group sort of centrally located? Is it Bountiful?
Actually, I don't know how much I can probably say this. So the order owns a bunch of different businesses, one of them being Standard Restaurant Supply. Have you heard of them?
Oh. Is that a big restaurant supplier in Utah?
It's pretty big.
Okay.
And we used to actually do church out of the back of Standard Restaurant Supply when we were smaller.
What city is that?
I want to say Salt Lake, but like West Salt Lake-ish area.
Okay.
But then we grew as a community because everyone's having kids so fast, right? And then they moved over to West Valley-ish area. They're still there today. I want to say Redwood Road and almost 33rd South. Do you know where that is?
Yeah, but when they call it the Davis County Co-op, that doesn't sound like Davis County.
No, they did. They call it LDCC now, Latter-day Church of Christ. It's always been LDCC, but it originally started as Davis County Co-op.
Do you know what city it was then that they were?
Bountiful.
Okay, so it started in Bountiful. It's now migrated to kind of West Valley.
Yeah.
In terms of critical mass.
Right, yeah. Sorry. So I remember growing up in the Standard Restaurant Supply, but it originated in Bountiful. Like literally they lived in tents in Bountiful at one point. So then they migrated down to West Valley.
And that's also interesting because Bountiful is known as one of those intensely Orthodox Mormon cities where a lot of the apostles, like Jeffrey R. Holland, would have raised his family. Yeah. And so the idea of Mormon LDS Church apostles and Kingstons all living in the same city is kind of mind-blowing.
I really believe that there was a lot more community back then that we don't know about because upon more of my research, I found that we were actually friends with, do you know who Krishna Venta is? He was a leader who's the guy that kind of started it? Charles Manson?
Charles Manson?
Charles Manson was kind of a part of the cult of Krishna Venta or wanted to be. Like they were somehow affiliated, but Krishna Venta somehow knew the leadership back in the day and was affiliating with the Kingstons. I don't know how. Cults were just big back then and they were all in cahoots with each other or didn't like each other. Super interesting. And it would be interesting to know like how many people were actually involved and hanging out with the order and then realizing what it is and like getting out.
Oh, okay.
Because I don't know.
And don't the Kingstons own like a waste removal company?
Yeah, they do. A1 Disposal?
I don't know. Some big major Utah waste disposal. So like the FLDS, they have their tentacles in prominent Utah businesses.
You want to say, how many businesses does the Kingston clan own? And then it'll go, they have Desert Tactical Arms. It's a gun company that they actually shot guns with Donald Trump Jr. I don't know if he was going to buy a gun from them or how he even knows them. But now that they've gotten so big, they have multiple businesses in multiple different areas. They have Arrow Real Estate. If you drive for 5 minutes here in Salt Lake area, you'll probably pass by a property they own or a business that they have. Redwood Road, I feel like, was the main hub for a while. They're taught to all of your incomes and outgoings be in the name of the Lord, so you can only shop at order businesses. So John's Marketplace on Redwood Road is actually a order grocery store, and we were encouraged to only go buy groceries from that grocery store. But then if you just go down the street, there's Advanced Copy, they own that. True Value, they own that. It's just boom, 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 boom.
So I'm looking again at Wikipedia or YouTube. It says the Kingstons have amassed a fortune estimated to be $300 million.
I believe it's more than that.
So maybe $500 million.
I mean, have you seen when Jacob Kingston went to prison for the fraud? If you Google Jacob Kingston, so my uncle Jacob Kingston was the like manager of WRE, Washakie Renewable Energy, and what they were doing was
that one. What is it? Renewable
Washakie
energy?
Renewable Energy.
What? Say it again.
Washakie Renewable Energy. Washakie.
That's the one that I had heard of.
Yeah. So the reason I believe they have way more money than the internet will ever say is because this is the one time they got caught for tax fraud. What he was doing was he had this biodiesel company, and he was for every gallon of biodiesel that you have, then the government will give you $1 per gallon. They were lying about how much they weren't even selling any, they weren't even making any, and they were able to steal $500 million, so $500 million from the government in like a short amount of time. But it was all over the news. He ended up getting arrested trying to fly to Turkey, and then 3-4 people have prison sentences now from the order.
I remember that name because when I would go to the movies in Logan, there would be commercials for Washakie
Renewable Energy.
So I had learned that name, and then I hear it in the news that they were associated with the Kingstons. But yeah, there's actually too many. I'm looking at all the holdings of the Davis County Co-op, and there's too many to read. Like it's 50.
But yeah, that's why I'm saying that number that they say is the money that they're worth, that's a low number, because it's not only the businesses they have, all these properties, they're really good about making it not linked to Paul, right? So if Paul goes down, nothing's really in his name, so they can still keep that, the bulk of what they have. They have a lot of pawns in the game. I feel like my dad is a pawn. Like they put my dad's name on things so that in case any of those businesses go down, then he goes down with them. You know what I mean? They're very smart, sadly, in a dirty way. I heard they have one member of the order, maybe more, but there's one specific one that I know of that his job is to just see like holes in the system to see how they can bleed the beast more. So one of the things that they did is, do you remember when Obama did this thing where first-time home buyers get like $8,000 or something? When that happened, then they just had everybody sell their homes to a different member, and then all of them are first-time home buyers, and then they made millions. So just stuff like that.
And I bet with these PPP loans, these were the COVID grants and loans. I bet just like the Mormon Church.
Yep, they're all over it.
That you guys probably made a ton of money off of the PPP loans.
Not to mention, we are born into. Sorry, this is probably the last thing that I want to talk about with lumping it all together, right? We talked about the bank system. They're very big on like control on the money. Mm-hmm. But now that we're talking about fraud, my mom being the second wife, and like that whole raid, you were saying they're scared of getting raided for polygamy, so they claim that they can't legally be married. So my mom, on my birth certificate, I have a fake name on the father slot. So my mom's name is in there, and then Kyle Grant is in there. I have no idea Kyle Grant. Because she did that, now where's Kyle Grant? They're trying to find him, right? She's eligible for food stamps. There's a bunch of food stamp fraud going on in the order. Nobody knows whose kids these are, and they're applying for WIC, food stamps assistance from the state.
And for those who aren't familiar with the term bleeding the beast, it's just this idea that the United States federal government's evil because they make polygamy illegal, and they persecuted the Mormon Church originally, but then the fundamentalist sects afterwards. And so what you want to do as a church is exploit the federal government as much as you can to get as much tax dollars from them as you can, because the United States federal government is the beast. And by draining money from the beast, even if it's fraudulent, especially if it's fraudulent, you're benefiting your people at the expense of a government you hate, right?
Right.
Is that what bleeding the beast means?
But I also feel like this whole like not having the father's name on the birth certificate is a way for the men to get out of paying child support and actually taking care of their families. You will not see, because a lot of people will be like, wow, your dad has this many kids. How does he support all those kids? He doesn't. That's how. These men are kind of just glorified deadbeat dads.
That's dark.
That is dark. Yep.
Well, should we jump into Amanda Rae's story
On
now?
that note, deadbeat dad. Yeah.
What year were you born?
95.
95. Okay. And I guess who was your dad and where was your mom in the order in the marriage order, I guess?
Okay. Yeah.
And was she related to your dad?
No. So I'll try to keep her story brief because it's a long one. My mom's very interesting. She was not born into it.
Oh.
My dad married her older sister and kind of got her to join because LaDonna, and remember LaDonna, the leader's mom, LaDonna is my mom's dad's sister. So LaDonna's my mom's aunt. So they were kind of affiliated, kind of knowing because their own aunt married the leader. So they're like, oh, okay. So they're going to the church dances and stuff.
So your mom's aunt married Paul?
The leader. Mm-hmm.
Married Paul.
Yeah.
So your mom's...
Sorry. My mom's aunt married Ortell.
Okay,
Who was married to my dad.
Okay, got it.
But my dad's not related to my mom. Sorry, every time I try to explain it, even I get confused.
Yeah. I feel like
Ortell,
the family tree, it's like next level family tree.
To dumb it down, Ortell married someone who's related to my mom. And that's how my mom started going to church dances and stuff because she's like, oh, okay.
Where was your mom raised?
She was in Orem for a while.
As a regular Latter-day Saint? She was raised LDS?
No.
In Orem?
No, I believe that they were like branch offs of LDS, or I don't think my grandpa was really religious. She wasn't really raised religious. But I think that maybe his grandma or something was LDS. There was some LDS lineage. I got to go do some more research on this.
Do you know what high school your mom went to? Was it Orem High or like Timpview or Mountain View or one of those? So she was raised without religion in the heart of Utah County?
I mean, she wasn't a member from what she tells me, but she was invited to LDS things all the time. And
church
so she
dances.
did partake, but she also partaked in the order functions. Like she was allowed to kind of bounce around.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then she bounced into the wrong one.
Then she bounced directly into
So
the
how
frying
was she
pan.
recruited into the order? At what age and how?
Okay, so her sister marries my dad. They're living in the basement of the home that my mom's still being raised in. My mom was really young, was still like, I want to say like a teenager when she's babysitting their kids. And then my dad has direction on my mom. At the time, she's only 17.
So you've already told us this, but your dad is married to both your mom and your mom's sister.
Mm-hmm. My mom's older sister.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Can you imagine? I know every time I think about it, I'm like, I could never. But she, it's a long story, but she gets coerced. I believe it was a lot of manipulation, a lot of God said, a lot of dreams, a lot of premonitions. She marries him at 17.
17.
As a second wife. And then...
And they're living where? In Orem?
No, now she moves into an apartment now that she's married, right?
And where's that?
In...
if you remember.
West Valley-ish area.
Okay, yeah.
Emory. Do you know the Emory area? Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. So a little tiny apartment. She gets pregnant with my older sister, and they believe in at-home births. So she's having all of her kids at home. This is her life now.
And at the time, is she living with her sister and their mutual husband in the same apartment? Or
No.
Okay.
So in the order, that's what's different. In the FLDS, they all like get in one home together, right? In the order, they have... Like the first wife is over in Taylorsville, the second wife's over in West Valley, the third wife. Because I believe if my mom lived in the same home as her sister, they would have beat each other to a bloody pulp.
Sure.
So she was in an apartment in Emory, West Valley area, and then the first wife was over a different home. And then she has me, who's the second oldest kid, in this apartment at home birth again. And we lived in this apartment, 2-bedroom apartment, until my mom had 5 kids. And finally, my dad was like, okay, we can move you into a bigger home.
And please forgive me and forgive my audience because I really am paying attention. But so your dad was not a Kingston, is that right? His last name is not.
My dad's technically his last name is Johnson, but he is technically Kingston because remember he's Paul's brother,
right?
And the leader is his dad, right?
Okay.
So the leader,
but his last
Ortell
name
Kingston.
was not Kingston.
His mom was Johnson. That was her maiden name, and he just kept her maiden name Johnson.
But you don't keep
But I'm Grant because I'm the second wife's kid, so I can't have his last name. So I'm Kyle Grant's kid on my birth certificate. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so you're a Grant.
First wife's family's Johnson. My family's Grant.
Okay.
Weird, huh?
But still,
wait, it's almost like not like a caste system, but like it really is like hierarchy in families. Is that right?
I feel like kind of there is a bit of a riff. Like people wish that they could take the last names, but also we got to protect the men from going to prison, and you know what I mean.
You're like doing quotes like it's not.
I don't think it's real. I think it's a way for them to get out of paying child support and getting food stamps and all these other things.
That's right. And even I would imagine this, not having like a commune situation, them actually giving space and having different families in different places makes it harder to track. It makes it harder to identify.
Oh, yeah.
That this is going on. So in that way, yeah.
Yeah, you think about it like because we have this different name on my birth certificate, how could they ever link it back to my dad unless my mom says it's him? And then the sad part is those like, then these men get away with so much. But they do claim because of that raid, whatever, we're so afraid of getting prosecuted. But when is the last time a polygamist got prosecuted for living polygamy? Cody Brown's on TV living polygamy, and I don't see him behind bars. You know what I mean? So I that's why I really just believe that it's all bullshit. They just don't want to have any accountability. And this is a good way for them to not have to do that.
Yes. It makes so many things covert.
Right.
Okay, so you and your dad have the Kingston blood in your veins, but your dad's doesn't have the Kingston last name. He's a Johnson.
Right.
But you are a
Grant.
A Grant?
A fake last name.
Yeah,
Grant. Yep.
But you don't go by Amanda Grant.
Right now?
Yeah.
I mean, on my license, I'm Amanda Rae Grant, but I just go by Amanda Rae because
got it.
Grant is a fake last name, and sometimes it feels weird that like that was just a made up name that my mom liked. And a lot of these women, literally, they're like, okay, well, I guess one girl loved Bradley Cooper, so she had her polygamous last name be Cooper. So now all of her kids are Coopers.
Okay, so I think where we were in the story, your mom had 5 children?
Yeah, so 5 kids in this apartment now, all of them
your
at
birth
home.
order, were you in the birth order?
The second.
Your
oldest.
second, okay.
Yeah, so she has my older sister, she has me, she has my younger sister, younger brother, and another brother, and we're in this tiny 2-bedroom home. And what I think a lot of polygamous families in the group did this, but my family specifically, when the first wife would finally move out of her home into a bigger home, then my mom would move into her old home. So it's kind of like recycling the homes. So we moved from the apartment into,
What are some of your earliest childhood memories? Like, was your dad around? Were you going to public schools? Yeah. Were people asking questions?
This is a good question.
Were you going to church? What was it like? All that.
Church every Sunday, of course. And then I did not know who my dad was because, again, fear of polygamy, fear of getting prosecuted for living polygamy. So this guy would come over. We called him by his first name. I had no idea he was my dad because they told me he was not my dad. And I remember being very confused because I would see the first wife's kids come over and they got to call him dad. And whenever I ran up to him, hugged him, and called him dad, I was always corrected. Like, that's not your dad.
What made you think he was your dad?
Because I'm like, where is my dad then? You guys obviously have a dad. Where is mine? And so they would point to my grandpa, my mom's dad, because he would be there a lot. And they would be like, that's your dad. So I would just go call my grandpa my dad. And then eventually my mom was really frustrated. Because can you imagine it being your sister's kids that get to call your husband dad, but not yours? So my mom was like, they're calling you dad. I don't care. But other families would call their dad uncle. Like, they would know that it's their dad, but you have to call him uncle. In some cases, it was their uncle. but so it's a way to protect them again, right? So this guy's coming over to my house every 2 days, and then all of a sudden every 3 days, and I didn't know why. And come to find out, it's because he married his own half-sister and was having kids with her. And my mom struggled really bad with this because, like I was saying, she wasn't born in it. Incest was not something that was normal for her. So I believe she did lose a baby over this because she was so depressed over it. Which the sad thing in the order is they claim that you have to get direction from God and all the wives have to be okay with the new wife coming in. That's not the case, though. There's so many times where the men just marry who they want and they're like, it's none of your business. And I really believe that's what happened with the third wife in my family.
Wow. And
sadly, because of this, and I think the first wife didn't like it either. A lot of our family pictures, we didn't invite the third wife. A lot of the functions, my mom didn't like the third wife being there. It was kind of like she was ashamed that her husband is sleeping with his own sister.
So I don't know how much you know about like more traditional LDS church scripture, but Doctrine and Covenants, section 132, is the polygamy section in modern LDS church scripture. So if you go to Doctrine and Covenants, section 132, Joseph lays out the
law of Abraham.
Well, he calls it the new and everlasting covenant. That's how we know about it. But it's basically his teachings on polygamy. And we've covered it on Mormon Stories in the LDS discussion series. But in D&C 132, which again is still scripture for mainstream Mormons today, it has this idea of what's called the law of Sarah, which is that any existing plural wife has to give consent on a new wife that gets brought on. And that's the revelation that Joseph Smith received when he told Emma about the polygamy revelation. So, it's interesting because people who go to fundamentalism from mainstream Mormonism do it trying to practice the real, the real doctrine of Joseph Smith. That would have been included in the real doctrine of Joseph Smith, but it doesn't sound like your dad practiced the law of Sarah, which is what Joseph Smith, but ironically, Joseph Smith didn't practice it himself. His first 20 wives, Emma didn't know about. I think his first 22 wives. So even though Joseph received the law of Sarah as revelation, he didn't practice it.
Right.
So I guess not practicing it is on brand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're just doing exactly what Joseph Smith said, I guess. Yeah,
or did, not said.
Yeah, what he did. Said
he said the wives need to give consent. But it sounds like your mom and your dad's first wife did not like the third wife being a sister to their husband.
I don't want to speak, I guess, for the first wife or for my mom, but I know that she did lose a baby over it, and I know and I saw how she was with everything. I hate saying what my mom said just because it gets her in trouble back in the cult, but it was very, very obvious that the third wife was just a get out of here, you know what I mean? And I think it was something that was polygamy was very traumatic for my mom too, because I remember asking her and being like, how do you handle your husband leaving you for 2 nights and going to sleep with other women? And I think that she didn't like that I would ask her those questions, but I was expected to do that too. So I would ask her, how do you feel when your husband leaves to go sleep with not just other women, your sister and his sister? And she would be like, Amanda, I just pretend that he goes on a work trip and I don't think about it. And I think a lot of women in these polygamous cults, that's exactly what they do. They just don't think about it. Their husband's on a business trip and they don't like people like me to ask and be like, how does that really make you feel?
Yeah, connect with yourself for a minute. They're like, I'd rather not.
Exactly.
I think no.
There was multiple times where I was getting in trouble for asking those questions, but I was like, how am I supposed to be expected to live polygamy when you guys can't even stomach that you're living it?
Yeah.
It was very
So can I ask, what age are you when you're asking these questions?
This is when I was a little older, when I started to realize that who my dad was married to, and I did not like that he married his half-sister. I did not. And so I was digesting it at 13, 14 years old. And this is also the age where they're really prepping you to pray for who you're supposed to be marrying. And then your friends, some of your friends are getting betrothed, right? And they know who they're supposed to be getting married to. So I was really digesting it. And I was like, I can't do it. Me and my sister, we made a pact that we would never marry the same husband because we saw what it did to my mom and her sister. They were not close. And so that was a lot of I mean, you eat, sleep, breathe polygamy in the order. It's all around you. You're not going to public schools. I was lucky enough to go to public school for 2 years. I went to
which grades?
Wasatch Junior High was 7th and 8th grade. And
but
then,
what about elementary school?
No, they have their own private elementary school.
Where's that?
It's right by the church. So same area, like West Valley area.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you've heard
the Kingstons in 2023, the Kingstons have a private elementary school that they run for members in West Valley-ish, Emory, Utah.
Yeah, and they also have Vanguard Academy now, which is technically a public school, but they've been getting in a lot of trouble because they're not public. They're all Kingston students.
It's like a charter school?
Yeah, but they're claiming millions in funds, in public school funds, but they're like 99% Kingston kids.
And that's in Salt Lake Valley?
Same area, yeah.
Holy moly, I had no freaking idea.
Yep.
That's so controlled. That is such a controlled environment.
Yeah, and it's...
Everywhere you go, like you're home, then you go to school, then you...
Everything, every day is about the work of the Lord, and we are the ones that are going to go to the celestial kingdom. Like it kind of breeds this like almost narcissism a little bit. Like you think you're better than the outsiders because in God's eyes you are, because you have these true teachings. So we're really taught to, like, obviously living in Salt Lake, you have to associate with outsiders if you have to, get your car serviced somewhere, but it's taught to really not be friends with them.
So you went to this Kingston owned and run elementary school called
Ensign Learning Center.
Okay, so you went to a school. You weren't homeschooled. You went to a school, but it was a school run by Kingstons.
Right. And so a lot of the curriculum is, so people have told me that they have memories of, like, order members were told to rip out pages of the science book that talk about evolution. And so it's very like filtered teaching for these kids. And then there's obviously pictures of numbered men all over the lunchrooms.
Of what?
Numbered men.
What does that mean?
We didn't talk about numbered men. So the numbered system in the order, it's just kind of like a brownie point system where in the beginning when Elden was the leader, he just numbered each person out that joined. So Elden's number 1, the next person's number 2. But now it's evolved to if you are righteous enough, Paul will give you your number. So my dad's number's 36. Paul's number's 9, and so it's kind of just like this you got your ticket to heaven thing.
And the lower the number, the more prestigious?
Yeah, because it's back in, it's the original numbers. So they still give out numbers to this day. They have number ceremonies. It's like a big like badge of honor thing. And I think there's do you know Tom Green, the polygamous Tom Green?
Yeah.
He joined the order and got the number 236. So we're all
when was this?
Or sorry, 269.
So he was a open polygamist during the Salt Lake City Olympics, like back in 2002. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, he was LDS. Same. When you were telling me that story about the girl who left to be a polygamist,
about Ann
Tom
Wilde.
Green, same thing. He left to be polygamist and he bounced around, became friends with the order members, and then at the end of his life, when he died of COVID, he died in the order. They gave him the number 269.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So he joined the order late.
Yep.
Okay. So your dad's number was what?
36.
And that's pretty low, right?
Right. I think they gave numbers to Ortell's kids beforehand because they're like the Kingstons, right? So my dad got 36, Paul got 9, Paul's brothers there's a 49 in there, there's a 33.
I've never heard of this numbering.
Yeah.
So when you were saying when you go to elementary school, the numbered men
are on the wall.
How many numbered men are on the wall? How many?
Just remember walking into the lunchroom and it was all the way, there was numbered men on this side, all the way around.
Wow.
Starting from the lowest number to the...
Counting up.
And does it just say the number or does it say number and their name?
Yeah, number and their name. If you look up Paul Kingston, I think it will show the picture that they actually had on the wall. It shows like 9 and Paul Kingston if you do Google imaging. I think also Jacob Kingston, same thing, because I believe Jacob Kingston's number is 95, the guy that went to jail for WRE, Washakie Renewable Energy. But it's the same thing. It's like a weird picture of them smiling. I don't know if they go to like a church thing and they're like, hey, you got your number, come take your picture. Like it's graduation, but they all have these nice pictures of themselves like they're glorified in heaven in this Ensign Learning Center. And then, though, with the numbering, I don't know if you'll find this interesting. I found it so weird. I was like, okay, so we're in the order, we have our numbers, whatever. But what about women? How come women can't get their numbers, only men? And they were like, oh, you do have a number. So your dad's number is 36. the first wife would be 36.1.
What the?
And you look at their graves.
The decimal system comes in handy for the women.
Exactly. And then my mom would be 36.2 because she's the second wife.
It's like the Dewey Decimal System, but for women.
But they really value these numbers so much that on the gravestones, like if you look up my grandma, Isabel Johnson gravestone, you get 8.6 because she was the sixth wife of number 8, Brother Ortell. Isn't that so weird? They have to have it cemented on their gravestone to show I was.
Wow.
This is my ticket, or I was a member of God's kingdom. It's
there are all these ways that they kind of value or measure people. Mm-hmm. And then it becomes like part of your identity.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we grew up with, we would get these shirts made that say, I love 36. And we'd be running around with these shirts with 36 on them. That's how I knew whose kids were whose at a lot of the functions. Oh, they got 33 on them. They're David's kid. Oh, they.
Wow.
So it's super interesting. But I remember getting older and being like, why do these men get numbers? Like, why does David Kingston get a number when David went to prison for raping his niece and he got to keep his number? But it's because he's Paul's brother.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that, if people can get their numbers taken away.
If they leave.
If they leave, you get your number.
And then does the number get reassigned to somebody else? Mm-hmm. So they recycle the number.
Yep.
Just like the homes.
You need to do, for your merch, so I'll just tell everyone, you do merch. Where is your merch available at?
JustCultyTings with a Z.com.
Say it again.
JustCultyTingz. JustCultyTings.com.
You should have some shirt that's like, I love 36 or I don't love 36 or
a cross out on 36.
Like a cross at 36. Yeah.
I do have a shirt that says, have you seen Kyle Grant? Because that's my dad's name on my birth certificate. And I get people a lot in my DMs on Instagram.
I missed it. Have you seen Kyle Grant?
Have you seen Kyle Grant? Because Kyle Grant's on my birth certificate, but I don't know Kyle Grant.
Is he a real person?
I get it.
He's like, wait, what? So I'll get people DMing me on Instagram being like, hey, there's a kid in my school named Kyle Grant. Is he your dad? Like, it's a running joke. Yes. I'm like, find my dad, please.
Oh my
gosh. I'll have to incorporate 36 now in there.
Oh my gosh.
We were talking about humor earlier as, a key way that you kind of cope and process.
Yep.
And we can see that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely has been a way to help. Like, because when there's so much, and there's been times where I left the cult and I'm just telling my life story and people will like start to get emotional. And I'm like, why are you crying? So I've kind of learned to just joke about the things. Because to me, it's my life too. And some of it doesn't really faze me. But to other people, my dad sleeping with his sister is like jaw on the floor. Why is your dad doing that? And I'm like, I don't know, go ask him.
Yeah, it's just what you're raised with. It's what you knew.
Yeah.
Okay, so you grew up going to an elementary school where numbered men were on the walls.
Yep.
Okay.
They were very glorified, that's for sure.
And it's for high demand religions or cults, it totally is on brand that they only want you associating with other cult members because it's dangerous to be in school, for example, with non-cult members.
Controlled information, no outside influences.
Right. And especially not, they don't want you marrying someone who's not in your race. They don't want you marrying, you know what I mean? Like they just want it to be very controlled to the point of even in school, they would have meditations at 12 o'clock. Like they just want to have you as brainwashed as possible. That's how it felt. But they would have meditation. So at 12 o'clock every day at school, the bell would ring and all the kids would have to sit down and do what they called meditations, meditate. And they would tell us what to meditate for 5 minutes, which is just like bowing your head and thinking a prayer, basically.
Wow.
Yeah, and I remember them telling us to meditate for Brother David to get out of prison. This is the man who went to jail for raping his niece. But they told us that it was, just multiple lies of why he was there. Like, it's our fault that he's there, or the government's just being prejudiced. In reality, he went to prison for raping his niece. But here I am being told in elementary school to do meditations to please help Brother David get out of prison. And he's a numbered man. It's just so ironic. Like when I started to research this is when I started to have my eye-opening moment. The polygamy, yes, all of that other stuff, I was starting to have my eyes open. And then reading the Bible verses that say, thou shalt not lay with thy sister. I was like, Dad, what is this? What are you doing? But then going into researching why David actually went to prison and why they were lying about it.
Yes.
Yeah, and that technique that cults often use is called blame reversal. If a leader does something wrong or if a prophecy isn't fulfilled, the most powerful way for an organization to maintain commitment and support of its members is to blame the members for the bad thing that happened. That was the church's or the leader's fault, but you got to blame the members, and then they'll be less likely to question or rebel.
It's like gaslighting at its finest.
Yeah.
Yep. And it worked for a long time. I was like, I just didn't question it.
So let's just say your elementary education and up through middle school before you switched, was it religious? Was it religion mixed with regular education? Were you singing hymns to the leaders? Did you have your own hymn book? To what extent was it traditional Mormon doctrine versus a different flavor of LDS theology? Talk about the indoctrination.
Okay, yeah. So in the schooling, I feel like it was obviously more school stuff. Like you had your science, you had your math, all of that stuff. But they did incorporate the ABC order standards. So you would have your homework checklist you'd bring home to your mom. And so you do health, science, and then you'd have ABC order standards, which we have an order standard for each letter of the alphabet. And we had to memorize those as a part of our homework. So I would say that the religious part of it was probably like maybe 30% of the school curriculum, especially if we were doing meditations every day, going home with some order stuff, right? But then the rest is like teaching you things.
So what's an example of like ABC order, the alphabet kind of thing?
A is for appreciation. I appreciate my life. I can't remember that whole one. It's a long one. But K is for kiss. I will say my first kiss for my wedding day with my husband or wife.
Whoa.
Yeah, that was something we had to memorize as kids in elementary school. And I do remember the talk of direction and saving yourself for marriage was something that was brought up a lot. I was like first grade. I remember talking to my friends about getting excited about who we think we're going to marry. I remember we all thought we were going to marry the same person. We're going to be sister wives.
With who? Marry who?
We thought we were going to marry one of Paul's sons.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and then I got older and I was like, I grew a brain. But yeah, at the time, like there was a lot of just talk about like be nice to everybody because they might be your sister wife, be nice to him, he might be your husband, be nice to, you know what I mean? Like it was just put in your brain so much in that environment. So in the schooling, yes, it was happening a lot with the ABC order standards. You had to memorize those. And then you go to church on Sundays, you had homework then, you had to get all the answers right and what order standards or what. And
do you remember any other letters besides K?
K is for kiss. Let's see. I have the list if you want me to give it to you. Z is for zest. I'm pretty sure.
What does that mean?
Something to do with modesty.
Oh, okay.
M is for, I'm pretty sure, modesty or marriage.
What were did y'all dress like fundies down in Southern Utah? Or did you dress differently?
We couldn't because we were so big on blending into society because we wanted to be able to bleed the beast too, right? Like Paul, I believe the leader Paul had his fingers with other businesses and other people and like tried to keep this persona that he wasn't a cult leader, right? So that he could have more business. So we did have some rules, like they didn't like you having pierced ears. They didn't like you showing kind of like temple type of like garment type of cover that much. Don't be showing. And then there was a lot of body shaming, not body shaming, but like shaming a woman for showing things that
and shoulders or knees or
like not even like anything bad, just like there was a lot of and I'm sure there was probably lectures in LDS church that were very similar to the lectures that we got about modesty. And then also I talked to Shalise about this on her channel. She had this in common with what we had, the analogy of the teared present. So like I have to save myself for my husband because every time I flirt with a boy or kiss a boy, I'm tearing that present. And then what am I going to not have a present for my husband? And Shalise was saying the chewed gum analogy, like you're a piece of chewed gum. So they would relate like purity and like being really modest to, you know, being good for your husband. But I always remember being like, this is bullshit because what if I'm a fifth wife and he already has 12 kids? Like, what am I saving myself for? But they would always just get upset at those questions. They didn't like those questions. But not FLDS dresses at all.
What about, alcohol and drugs and stuff like that? And what about media, like TV and movies and things like that?
Yeah.
So alcohol and drugs, obviously a huge no-no. Even coffee was like, I knew members that drank it, but they were very like hush-hush about it. And even sugar, They would do a lot of sugar cleanses. But as far as media goes, they were very just like certain things you shouldn't be watching. And Paul would get up on the stand and say, sometimes it was random things like Lion King is not a good movie to be watching because Scar goes against his brother, who's the leader. I was like, what? I didn't even realize he did that, but I guess it was really personal for Paul. So he didn't want us watching it.
Don't give anyone any ideas.
Exactly. And then Tangled was one, which I remember getting mad at the Tangled one because I'm like, he's like, she goes against her mother and leaves the tower. I'm like, that wasn't her mom. If you know anything about Tangled, that wasn't even her mother.
But the idea of being held up in a tower and then breaking out, that's a metaphor we use all the time for leaving.
That's right.
Just a high demand religion or the LDS church.
So he's like, don't watch that.
Yeah.
And then also random songs, like he said, Rihanna's Love the Way You Lie. It's a terrible song, but then I would listen to it after leaving. And I was like, this is the life of order women. I love the way you lie. Stand there, watch me burn. That's all right, because I like the way it hurts. That's literally an order woman's life.
So that's the bite model, controlling behavior, controlling information, controlling thoughts, and manipulating with emotion. They're controlling the information you receive. They're controlling your behavior. They're controlling your emotion to limit your thoughts.
Yep.
That's right.
And then they're manipulating you with emotion, right? Yep.
And then as soon as someone has a free thought, like me, I would be like, well, what about the Bible says not to lay with your sister? What about there's multiple things in the Bible that say something's against polygamy, right? It doesn't seem like we're doing the right thing here. Then either I get shut down really quick, like you're out of line, or this. They would say this thing. I don't know if they said it in the LDS church, but there is the Bible has been modified so much in its what's that called when you change it from one text to another text? Translation. Yeah, there's been so many lost in the translations. There's a true King James version of the Bible that states all of these things to be true. And I'm like, where is it? Can I see it?
I want to see it.
Yeah. And I remember them telling me a specific member that had it, and I was like, well, I would love to see it because I don't like living by these beliefs that are against what the Bible is saying. So the more I would question, though, and the more I would cause others to question when I was around them, because I would show them these verses, then I was not invited to parties anymore. All of a sudden, my reputation was through the mud. The order, like the leader and his brothers, were huge gossipers. They would just be gossiping about the people that were the bad people. Like Amanda's sleeping with all the men in the church, and then all of a sudden I have this terrible reputation, and I'm like, all I'm doing is trying to seek the truth.
That's huge. I think that's a huge part to sort of, maintaining control, public shaming.
Yeah.
How we deal with like kind of disruptors. Also making an example of people. Like if you do that, this is what's going to happen to you.
Oh, yeah, because how do you get someone to not trust someone and not believe someone is to tear down their character. And then that's genius, right? Mm-hmm. Then they won't listen to anything that comes out of their mouth.
Yeah.
And so...
Okay. So how did you get to go to a public middle school? That just seems dangerous. And I wonder if was that the beginning of your corruption and your, disaffection? The seeds of your ultimate disaffection, or was it even before that?
I hate saying that with order members, because I know order people are going to be watching this, and I feel like they're going to be like, "Yep." So we have to make sure that we all stay away from order school or outside schools because that's what corrupted Amanda.
That's a good point.
But the reality is, like, that's when you start to realize we were just a tiny little speck in the world, and who were we to think that we're the chosen ones of God and everyone else is going to burn in hell? That's what
you're saying. Those thoughts came once you started attending
once I went to
public school.
Because my first friend I made was not a white person, and then I remember crying, being like, "So this person's automatically going to hell because by our teachings, white people are the only ones in heaven."
Oh, you didn't talk about that. So what are the racial teachings around skin color?
I believe this comes from Joseph Smith, The Great War in Heaven, where there's the battle between good and evil. This is what happened before any of us were ever born. We were all angels in heaven with God and Jesus and Satan, and we were all fighting about if we should take Jesus's plan or Satan's plan. Mm-hmm. So the ones who chose Jesus's plan, which was us white people, and they went on this side and they get to be members of earth, whatever. And then there was the demons of hell who chose Satan's side, so they never get to be born. And then there was the fence sitters who could not decide Jesus or Satan. And those are all the people who are not white.
Who are brown-skinned. And that's absolutely been taught as Mormon, mainstream LDS church doctrine for at least a century. Now the church distances. Just in the past decade, the LDS church will distance itself from that teaching. But I was raised as a traditional Latter-day Saint with that teaching of the fence sitters in the pre-existence and became the people of color in
And
this earth.
What we believed, I don't know if they believed that in the LDS church, but what we believed is they get a chance to come to earth, but they're going to go straight to hell afterwards.
Okay, that's what you were taught.
And I remember asking my dad, like, what's the point of them being born then if they're just going to go straight to hell? And it was like part of their punishment. But I cried over my friend who wasn't white because I was like, this is so unfair because she's such a nice person. Why would God be so?
Was she Latina or African American?
She's black.
Okay.
She's a black woman.
And that was the first friend you made
in public school?
In middle school.
Yep.
What middle school again?
Wasatch.
Wasatch Middle School, which is again in West Valley area. Emory?
No, Wasatch is on the east side. You know, Wasatch, Skyline, Churchill. It's by Cottonwood
that's
Mountain.
What I thought.
Wasatch Front. Yep.
I wasn't sure if there were many.
Because my mom, thank goodness for my mom. So the reason I was going to public school is because at the time they didn't have the junior high built and like ready to go for the members. So a lot of them were doing homeschool.
For the Kingston middle school.
They didn't have the Kingston cult school ready yet for that age.
Which is now called what?
Vanguard.
Okay, but at the time they didn't have it. So
there was none. So a lot of members were forced to do homeschool or Penn Foster was a big one. And then
what's that?
It's a big homeschool that I actually graduated from Penn Foster.
Okay.
So most members will be graduating from Penn Foster. Some of the kids were trusted to go to public school, and I was one of those. Thank goodness my mom had me go to Wasatch. I feel like Wasatch was such a good experience for me.
So that's near Holiday, right?
Yeah, I was living in West Valley.
Wow.
And I was taking a UTA bus an hour up that way.
Well, there are middle schools near where you lived. Why did
my mom wanted me to go to a good, because it had really good stats of I can't remember the specific thing she wanted her kids to learn, but she cared, I guess, about our academics.
Something about the academic teachings at Wasatch.
Yeah. And then also we did have a relative that lived next to us that was going up there too. And so it just worked that we could all go
carpool
together.
Or go together, yeah.
Yeah. Because the other option was to go to these schools that were kind of, sadly in our area, those schools weren't doing as well academically. So we went to Wasatch. And then I was able to, I got to meet a girl who her family ended up kind of adopting me when I left. So that was such a good experience for me, like to realizing I don't want to be racist, to realizing there's so much more in the world. Like we're so like naive to think that we're the only ones that God loves, you know?
Yeah.
And then I got to see people in other churches and then realizing, oh, you believe your church is going to the only one going to heaven.
That's right.
So we're not the only ones that are this delusional.
Right.
I have to admit, the seeds of my ultimate, I'll say apostasy in quotes, but my questions came out of public schooling too, as a mainstream Latter-day Saint, because I had Baptist friends who or Catholic friends, and they all believed they were part of the true church as well. So public schools did for me something similar. It just took me a lot longer than it did you.
Because for a while it's like, who are we to be the right ones?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's just because it's what you've been told.
Yeah.
It's nothing. I didn't see God, did you? I never saw Jesus.
Yeah.
You just have to really have, and they were big on, you can have faith through your parents and you can have testimony through your parents. And I was like, that's basically blind following, and I don't like it.
Okay, so you're going to this Wasatch Middle School, and you're starting to have questions.
Yep.
So how does that impact your relationship with your mom and with your non-dad dad and with your church? Talk about that.
So my mom was more understanding because she grew up as an outsider, and she wanted me to have outside friends. So she would allow me to be a part of some things. She allowed me to do the cross-country team, but she was like, I'm not going to take you to the cross-country team. You have to figure out how to get there. Oh. Yeah. And I think that if I ever saw her supporting too much of an outside life, then she would get backlash from my dad. There was a lot of, whenever I started to question things, my dad would be like, it's because she's hanging out with those outsiders. And then obviously eventually, because I was too curious, I guess, and I did start to be curious about boys, and that was the end of my outside school saga, I guess.
Has your mom been on your podcast?
No, she's still a member of the order.
I'm seeing a photo. Is there a photo of you sitting by your mom on a couch? No.
She did go on Escaping Polygamy because she did leave the cult and then she did go back.
What's Escaping Polygamy? Tell us what that is.
Escaping Polygamy is the show I was a part of for about 4 years, and we helped members leave on TV.
Where was that show broadcast? Escaping Polygamy.
A&E.
It was on A&E.
Mm-hmm.
And you were on that for 4 years. Mm-hmm. And your mom went on that show?
Yeah, she was on one episode leaving, and she was done with the group, and then she went back. My dad found out where she was and brought her back.
Were you on with your mom on Escaping Polygamy?
Yeah, I was helping her leave.
Oh, wow.
So she was pretty public about it, and she's struggled with her faith for a while. And honestly, that's why I feel like me and my mom had a closer relationship, because she confided in me, and a lot of her older daughters she confided in. And I honestly appreciate her honesty so much because, yes, the outside school experience was so eye-opening, but also having an honest, real mother not lie to me and bullshit about how hard polygamy is and how she doesn't like the incest, and realize, okay, like, I don't think I can do that. Because if my mom was lying to me and doing what all the other moms were doing with their kids, I would have probably gotten married and hated her afterwards. Been like, you liar. This is not what you said it was. And I saw a lot of women doing that. They would get married after their mom made it sound like this fairy tale, being married to their own brother. And then their daughter would get married and be like, you could just see. There was something we talked about in the order. Like, look at their face. You can tell they just got married, because there was a facial difference in the women where they were just drained and sad. Not all of them. The first wives had a little bit of happiness, but the plural wives, it was like, this is your life now. Good luck.
Do you say your mom's first name publicly?
I mean, I can. It is a public name.
Okay.
And so is my dad's too. I just don't know if you try to edit out. All the names I've said thus far are public names.
So I'm not asking you to unless you're okay doing it.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So
her name's Lori, and my dad's Verl.
Verl?
Yeah. Every time I say Verl, everyone's like, Verl? What is that?
So your mom's full name is?
Lori Peterson.
Okay.
And so Paul is a Peterson of and LaDonna's Peterson. So that's how my mom technically is related. This is what's weird. My mom and dad are not related, but my mom is related to Paul, and my dad is related to Paul, because my mom's related to Paul through LaDonna. My dad's related to Paul through their dad, Ortell.
Right.
Okay.
So I'm double blue blood, if you think about it, because I'm related to the leader.
So in middle school, you started to like boys, and your mom found out, or what?
Yeah. So I was not liking the idea of marrying a cousin. I did ask my dad one time, could I potentially marry a outside boy and bring him into the order? And he laughed, and he's like, we don't do that here.
Okay, by this point, did you know he was your dad then?
Yeah, as a teenager, I knew. I knew as a teenager, but I didn't know up until I got baptized by him at 8 years old. Because at 8 years old, I knew, I was smart enough to know that everyone else was getting baptized by their dad. And so I was like, okay, for sure, this is my dad.
And did you ever say, Dad, are you my dad? Like,
I did.
Okay, do you want to talk about, like, your relationship with your dad and conversations you had with your dad? Yeah.
So when I was younger, we called him Verl by his first name. And then I got that kind of jealousy that the first wife's kids get to call him dad, and I don't have a dad. Where is my dad? So I remember very vividly, he was buckling me into my car seat. That's how young I was. And I said, I love you, Dad, or bye, Dad. And he looked me in the eye and said, I'm not your dad. Flat out. I was like, okay, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this information now. I don't know who you are. So we just called him Verl. And I remember people would call, and I remember my sister picked up the phone. She'd be like, hello. They'd be like, is your dad there? And they'd be like, well, we don't have a dad, but we have a Verl. So it was a very...
We have a Verl. Yeah. That should be a shirt. We have a Verl.
Do you want a Verl? Who has a Verl? But then as I got older, because he was baptizing me, because, I was starting to develop my brain. I was like, okay, so this is my dad, but it's like a weird thing. Yeah. And my friends over here are calling their dad uncle. It was like a long, slow process to kind of figure it out.
Yeah, so confusing for a child.
Yeah. And I feel like there was a lot of uncertainty, and I think a lot of common things that these cults have is do not trust yourself because you're wrong. Right. So I was always doubting myself as a young kid, like, I don't know what's going on. Where are we? What's happening? And then I get a little older and it's legitimate. This is my dad. He's baptizing me. I'm calling him dad now. And then I don't even know that my dad has a third wife. And there's just so many things that were being hidden from me and lies that I had to uncover that they were being really shady about. So it made me not trust myself, but then it also made me not trust him. Because I'm like, why are you're marrying these people? I have siblings with this person. You're not even going to talk to me about that? Like, run it by me. But I think it was also that my mom was, again, ashamed of it all. And like, it was all hush hush. It was a secret wedding because it was an incest wedding and a polygamous wedding, so it had to be secret. But then I find out I have siblings from them. My dad wasn't very like, hey, how's your day? Or, what's up? It was more of like, if he was wanting to sit down and talk with me, I was in trouble. So anytime he wanted to talk with me, I knew, oh, shoot, what did I do? Because he didn't, how was he going to have time to sit down and have one-on-one conversation with 30 plus kids?
That's how many he has?
He had 15 with the first wife. He had 10 with my mom, and he has 8 with the third wife.
Holy moly.
Yeah.
So you didn't have a personal connection with your dad in terms of like friendship or daddy-daughter dates or? There
was one time where we did do a daddy-daughter date, but it was with me, my older sister, my younger sister, and then the other sister from the first wife. He took us all out for Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was weird because he was like, I was like, first of all, why is he taking us all out? What's going on? He gave us all a locket with a picture of him in it saying that basically we are his until we are our husbands. It was so weird. And my sister from the first wife like put it on and she was so excited. And I was like, I am so embarrassed to wear this. And maybe it's because I went to public school and no one in public school is like, daddy, daddy's around my neck, wearing I Love 36. You know what I mean? It was like worshiping your father. And for Christmas, I got a picture. I unwrapped it. It was a picture of my dad. I was like, what am I supposed to do with this? Worship it. So there was this really weird, and this wasn't just my family. It was a really weird glorifying this man that comes around like for some of them once a month. Because the dad has so many wives.
That's right. And that it sounds like you have very little connection with, So, yeah, on some level, the kind of level of importance that he is given in your life, you'll have these paramount, like jarring moments of his picture in a locket to someone that you really don't have conversations with or any connection with, and you're not really, it's not like he knows you. And he talks the most to you when you're in trouble.
Exactly. And I remember there was a class in Sunday school, and by this time I'm like in my teen years, I'm starting to realize like my dad's not who I thought he was because he was so glorified and he's just a human. In our Sunday school class, they were talking about heroes. Everyone get up and talk about your heroes. Every single person said a numbered man, except for me. I was like, I think that our moms are the ones who we should really be talking about because they're the ones doing everything. My mom is having all of the kids. She's expected to still work. She pays the rent. She feeds the kids. She gets us to school. Yeah. What the hell are our dads doing, you guys?
Where was she working? Where was your mom working?
Okay, so at this time, she was working at Bountiful Baby. It's an order business. I thank God that she was so big on working from home and actually watching her kids because a lot of the times.
Wait, what's Bountiful Baby?
It's so weird. One of the numbered men in the order, his number is 79. He decided to create this business based off of like fake, realistic looking babies.
Dude, this guy was a Mormon Stories listener. A guy used to come to my events who owned a company called Bountiful Baby.
What was his name?
I forget, but it was just like 5 years ago.
Was it Nevin Pratt?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't like him. You want to know why I don't like him?
It seemed really super sketchy, and he said he owned Bountiful Baby, but I never understood what was going on there.
My mom worked for him, and he was actually paying her really well. And then as soon as me and my sisters leave, she has no more marriage age daughters. She got demoted to a janitor position and basically like let go. And then she gets moved out of her home into her old home. She started having to work at family stores for $7.25 an hour.
So was he marrying your sisters?
No, I'm trying to understand if it was that he was trying to marry one of us, and that's why he was giving my mom so much money and such a lenient position, or
how do you spell his name? E-V-A-N?
Nevin, N-E-V-A-N, Pratt, P-R-A.
Wait, say it again.
Nevin, N-E-V-A-N, Pratt, P-R-A-T-T.
Okay.
And then Bountiful Baby. I'm pretty sure his picture will pop right up.
No, I'm looking in my email because this guy used to.
Yeah,
I totally have emails from Nevin Pratt.
What?
Like here, I'll read one. Not to make this about me, but he's like, he was offering me room space. So so this is from Nevin Pratt, bountifulbaby.com, August 10th, 2017.
Wow.
Our training room can be used as a free venue for Mormon stories if you need one. We are in West Valley. The size of the training room is blah, blah, blah.
I wonder if it's because he liked that you were talking about the Mormon church and they hate the Mormon church. And to them, they're like, yeah, doggone the Mormon church.
He used to come to all my events and try to get me to collaborate with him. He's a Kingston?
Yeah. You know who he married? Remember Tom Green?
Yeah.
Tom Green's wife that he went to prison for marrying underage is sisters to Nevin's wife.
How many wives would Nevin Pratt have?
I think he's been trying to live polygamy for a long time and he can't because he's not Kingston enough. He's Pratt. And I think, this is just my assumption, that that's why he was treating my mom so good because she had 3 daughters of age to be married. And that's what I think. Mm-hmm. And it was never talked about, but his daughters live polygamy. And he's very pro-polygamy for that. He's had 2 sons leave, though, because I think they can't really, get married in the order.
So he had this company where they made realistic-looking babies called Bountiful Baby. Mm-hmm. And your mom worked for him?
Yep.
For how long?
We helped make the paints for the babies. I believe it was years. I want to say at least 5 years with him.
Because if I'm remembering right, he brought a woman that he presented to me as a wife, but she was way younger than him, if I remember
Maybe
right.
He did have another wife after I left. I can't think of who. Wow. It can't be a Kingston girl. It has to be a less Kingston. Because his wife is brown hair, tall. She does not look young. I mean, I'm not saying she looks old, but she doesn't look like she's a teenager.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I don't know what a Kingston's doing listening to Mormon stories.
I know.
But
you probably have a lot of them on there.
Yeah, I've got a ton of emails from Nevin. So I don't know what made Nevin stop listening, but that's
Maybe
just a weird
said something
coincidence.
A little too mean about Joseph Smith.
Okay.
Because they definitely believe in Joseph Smith.
Yeah.
But are we keeping this stuff in about Nevin?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Because I don't know, he's a little bit sue happy. He just sued someone.
Oh, well, I'm not saying anything that is untrue.
Okay.
That I know to be untrue, and that's the only way you get sued is if you knowingly say something that's false. And I don't think I'm doing that. Anyway, I don't even know if he's a polygamist. These are just my memories.
Exactly.
I could be totally
and I don't know if he's a polygamist either, but I do think that I know that he believes in polygamy because I watched his daughters get married into it, right? He did have a son that got married, and then his son ended up leaving, and so did that girl, and then his other son left. I don't know why, but yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, well, you mentioned the name, and I've got all these emails from him, so that's not made up. Anyway, okay, so your mom is raising 10 kids as basically effectively a single mom and working for Nevin Pratt to help provide for the 10 kids. Is that right?
Yeah, so she was the mom and the dad, right? And my dad really, just like that, we were just talking about what did you get? Did you talk to your dad? What did we get from him? I remember him coming home and watching football. I hadn't seen him for 3 days.
NFL football?
He loves the Raiders. Huh. Yeah. Don't the Raiders...
Is that a little connecting point for you?
I don't know.
I might like Burl.
He likes football?
He had time to have a fantasy football team.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And then we're over there just, Dad, I want some attention.
All right, I have a question for you about your mom's job and money.
Okay.
So would she be able to use the money that she earned working to help her family directly, like her kids at all? Or again, does that go into, does she not see that money and then have to ask permission to get the money?
So the way it works when you're working with these order businesses is it goes directly into your order account, right? And then you have to call and get an add-on. And I feel like I don't ever remember my mom having issues with getting money out, but she didn't talk to me much about that. But it's the same process. Like they have to let her know if they can get the money out, and she didn't have a credit card either. They don't have credit cards really within the group. I think they had gas cards at one point where you could go get gas, and that was it. So they're really strict on who's getting money out and how much is allowed. And I actually worked at the bank for a while, and they told me that I could only give out a certain amount a day. Okay. And this was one. They have two banks in the area of that West Valley area. I was talking about Salt Lake, West Valley area.
Banks that they own or banks?
It's their banks, yeah.
What are they?
They're not public banks. It's like order banks where they get the money. But they have their money in multiple different banks. One of them is Brighton Bank because that's the closest one to the location of their two banks. But like,
do you know the names of their private banks?
Fidelity Funding. You can Google it, actually, Fidelity Funding, the location. And
this is a Kingston bank. Mm-hmm. Okay.
But you're not like, there's like no soliciting sign out there. Like outsiders don't come in there. You have to get buzzed in to actually go into the back. But yeah, she was asking if my mom could actually have access to her money. And it's the same process for everyone. Like you have to call, get an add-on, get the money out, and they can flat out say no. And there's been times where if someone is known to be, or they're scared that the person's going to leave the order, they will...
Like freeze?
Yep, all of a sudden your money's gone. Or you'll look at your bank statement, because I think they have an app now where you can kind of see what's in there, but it changes. They can change the amount all the time.
Wow.
But when I was leaving, I was lucky enough that I worked at the bank because I figured out how to make fake authorizations.
Wait, you worked at this bank? Mm-hmm. Oh, wow.
Yep.
Don't admit to anything illegal.
It was fake authorization for my own account with my own money.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it was nothing illegal.
Okay.
What they were doing was a illegal thing.
Yeah.
So I was getting the slip to go put it in because what you have to do is you have to write down how much money and what you need that money for. So down to the if you need tampons, if you need, you know what I mean? And a lot of times I would just write tampons because I was mad. But you have to get that authorization number from the card line and then give it to them, and then they'll give you the money. So it's a weird process.
So effortful.
What's weird is in the United States, religions are tax exempt. So this Kingston Group, I assume, would be a tax exempt organization, becoming a $500 million church with government subsidies and protection in effect by not having to pay taxes.
Right. Exactly. And they do. Last I heard, they are tax exempt, and that's why when you drive by the church, there's a really faded sign that says Latter-day Church of Christ, LDCC. You can't really read it unless you go up close to it, but I think it's because the legal requirement is you have to have. So
that's the name of the co-op.
Mm-hmm. LDCC. That's the, I think, tax exempt name, right?
Okay. Okay, wow.
So
that was Margie's question about whether your mom got to control her own money or not.
Yeah. And it's the same process, but like my dad was pulling out of the account whenever he wanted to. And then there's this whole, I'm trying not to confuse too many viewers because it's like, wait, you lost me, because I'm even like, I know it's a lot. But there's also this thing that they would do where they would put money into the back account. So like my money would never go up past $2,000. And I would ask, why have I been working and not taking money out for years?
Yes.
Why isn't it going past 2,000? They had this whole thing where, by the end of the year or by this certain amount of time, we put the money into what we call a back account. I never saw it. I really just think it was a way for them to control the money even more and take as much. So they take
kind of beyond a certain point. They'll kind of take it.
Yep. And then you have to obviously automatically take 10% out, and they make you sign a 10% form every year, which is Mormon doctrine, right? You have a 10% form and an inventory form, which means inventory every year you would write down everything that you have of value, like your car, your home, I had some cousins who said they even had to count the bobby pins they had and say, this is the work of the Lord's. So you are the property of the order, basically.
How is this not illegal? This feels like slavery. This feels like...
Yep, exactly.
Exploitation,
trafficking. There's got to be some law against this kind of stuff.
And they somehow you said it right, like how they turn it around on their cult members. Somehow when people would leave, it's so weird. They would call and say, hey, you owe us money. And some people would be like, really? I owe you money? And they think that there's some legal standpoint that they have. They don't. They're not a legal bank. They would get in so much trouble for what they're doing.
So it's not a legal bank.
No. But here's the thing is like when Jacob went to prison for the WRE thing, there was a raid. They got raided and like all of the documents that they have in the thing, like they were destroyed. So I feel like a lot of the stuff that they do is just like, we don't even know. We don't even know what they're doing. I think that they keep track in some way, but I have no idea how much money they actually took from me. And then just like that, some people will leave and be like, oh, I owe you money. I'm so sorry. Let me get you that money. Because they think that there's some legality to it. I've had people call me and be like, I'm so afraid to leave because they said that if I leave, then the police will make me give my kids to them. And I'm like, the police are not going to do that. But how are you supposed to know? You're in this cult your whole life. You have no idea what the real world is like.
Yes, it really is an alternate reality that they get to control.
But right here in Salt Lake County.
And currently, like going on right now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, this isn't 50 years ago in some desert town on the border of Colorado. This is Salt Lake City 2023.
Right. You probably walked past. I mean, apparently you know members.
Yeah, they're listening to Mormon stories. Hey, Kingstons.
Hello there.
Wow. Okay. So you get pulled from middle school public schools and you get put into what high school?
Penn Foster homeschool.
That's the homeschooling thing you said.
So it costs, honestly, I don't even know if my dad lied about this now, but he was like, we're going to put you into Penn Foster because I got caught dating a Mormon boy.
Really?
Yeah.
Were you dating him?
I went on a couple dates with this Mormon boy.
Did you kiss him?
I did.
And I'm not asking that for only because it breaks the K.
Yeah.
The K.
Only because it breaks the K.
And it also,
you broke the K.
Wait, and it also shows your spirit, like your sense of like.
Yep. And because at that point, I was kind of like, this is all kind of bullshit.
Okay, so talk about you concluding the church wasn't true.
Yeah.
Because I don't think you took us there.
Yeah. It stems from, I think, the losing respect for my dad. I lost all my respect for him around the time when I just caught him in these lies. And then
And the main lies were just the top 3, top 5?
Okay, so him just not being transparent with marrying his half-sister and that she was the half-sister. And
did he stop at 3 or did he have more than 3?
He stopped at 3, okay. But he kept trying. And so this is one of the things that just made me lose trust in him was he was going forward. This is what they do in the orders. They have direction, then they go forward on my sister's friend. She was younger than his kids. And I was like, I found this out. And I was like, why are you doing this? Like, I don't understand.
Your dad was trying to get with your sister's friend.
Yes.
As a 4th wife.
And this whole time we had been going to her family's house and having parties. And I thought it was a genuine, happy, healthy connection.
It was grooming.
Meanwhile, my dad was trying to get that girl to marry him. And I'm like, I felt so disgusted that my dad was that kind of a person. But I wish so bad.
How old was she at the time? How old was she?
I think she was 16 or 17.
Okay. So of age from a Kingston standpoint.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then I'm like.
And you were 13 at the time?
I was.
Because you were a second.
I think I was 15, 16.
Okay. And this is your older sister.
My older sister's friend. Yep.
Okay. So you're 15 and you're seeing your dad try to make the moves on your older sister's friend.
Right. And then also at this time, I find out about David Kingston going to prison for raping his niece and that Daniel Kingston beat the daughter. So Daniel Kingston's daughter was supposed to be married to David, the uncle. Daniel and David are brothers. So basically like Daniel being like, hey, brother, here's my daughter, 15-year-old daughter, 16, 15-year-old. And she doesn't want to be married to him. He's now a rapist because they're forcing this marriage. The mom's not doing anything. Daniel's not doing anything. So she is trying to fight it. Daniel beats her to almost, a lot of people say almost death. Like the broken bones and the bruises were so bad. But I didn't know any of this.
Did you know this girl?
She was a part of Daniel's family and had to leave.
But did you know her? Did you grow up with her?
I knew her family.
Okay.
So I'm hearing from someone, they said, Amanda, ask your dad if Daniel beat Marianne. The girl's name's Marianne. This is a whole story. You can look this whole thing up. Say, Amanda, ask your dad, did Daniel beat Marianne? And I was like, a numbered man would never do that. I don't know what you're talking about. I'll ask him right now. I go up to my dad and I say, did Daniel beat Marianne? And my dad was like, we don't need to talk about that. And I was like, well, at least he didn't lie, but he was not okay with telling me the truth about these numbered men. He was okay with keeping the secrets of the rape that was happening with David and of Daniel abusing his own daughter. So at that point, I was like, well, I can't trust him. And then he's going forward on my sister's friend. And then he's not supporting me I wanted to marry someone who was not related to me. He wasn't supporting that. And then he wouldn't listen to me on, like, I'm not going to marry my cousin. I don't like polygamy. He tells me that someone came forward on me, which is a choice for marriage. And I'm like, okay, I don't care.
And you're 15 at the time or 16?
But this is when I'm on my way out of the order. Sorry, okay. And I'm like telling you the leading up points.
Yeah.
So it was the Daniel thing, and then it was him trying to marry my sister's friend, and then now he's like someone came forward on you, and I knew something.
And does the leader of the Kingston Church tell men which wives they get, or tell teenage girls who they're supposed to marry? Because like with Warren Jeffs got to approve and he would reward teenage girls to the men who obeyed him and who he wanted to give favors to or power to.
Yeah. I think it's more, in our group, it was more of a chain of command thing, but it was very obvious when someone's, so like a specific family, for example, gave all of their daughters to Paul's family, like all of them just happened to marry Paul's kids. And then this family all of a sudden has a lot of money and control over businesses. So it's not like written in stone, like if you give me your daughters, you'll get businesses, but you could see it. And
was it a numbered man who came forward for you? Do you know?
No, he was my cousin, who was my age. He was young too, so I would have been a first wife. But again, he was my cousin with his parents being siblings. And I was like, I told my dad, I'm like, I don't want this. Like, you already know who I want to marry. I told my dad who I wanted to marry, and was not someone related to me. It was not this Kingston mumbo jumbo.
Is it better to be a first wife in this order?
I remember talking to my friends growing up, and they all wanted to be first wives, but I told them, I was like, being a first wife sounds like the worst hell, because you fall in love and you get to experience that, and then you get it ripped from you, and you have to watch him fall in love with someone else. So I'd rather be like a 10th wife. At least walk in knowing what you're signing up for. But a lot of them did like the idea of being a first wife to get that experience.
And what was it as a teen that made you not want to be a part of the incest stuff? Like, was it stuff you read? Was it biology? Like, that was a core teaching. So what made you come to the conclusion that the incest stuff wasn't for you, given that you were indoctrinated and socialized to love that versus not like it? Does that make sense?
But with a little space where you went to public school.
Right. I honestly think that it was my mom, because so many people didn't see an issue with marrying your cousin. So many people didn't see an issue with marrying their own half-siblings. But my mom was like, I remember one time like having the concern that I could marry my half-siblings of my dad's, of the first wife, and my mom just laughed about it. And so I was like, okay, so that's not a worry then. I shouldn't be worried about that. But I think that my mom just really instilled like common sense in that area with me. Whereas I don't think, because people have asked this question a lot, like, aren't we born to not want to be attracted to our siblings? Like, okay, but if you're raised in this cult where your half-sibling lives clear downtown, you don't really know them that well, you could be groomed to marry them, you know? I mean, back in the day when the kings and queens keeping their bloodline stuff, like, they did it too. Not saying it's normal, but I'm saying it's definitely not something that your body just knows to not be with your half-sibling, you know? Because a lot of them were just doing it.
So your mom somehow led you to feel like you didn't want to marry a family member.
Yeah. I think that the public school thing did have something to do with it, but I really think that having my mom as a friend and just like someone that I looked up to so much, and I really valued a lot of her words, I realized, yeah, I agree with you. Like, I wouldn't want my husband to marry his sister either. That is kind of weird, you know?
Yeah, I could see that being really impactful. You seeing your mom's difficulty with her husband marrying a sister.
Yep.
And being able to read that and see their relationship suffer.
Yep.
That would be.
And trying to put myself in the shoes too. 'Cause I don't know how, if it's an empath thing or if it's a woman thing or what, but a lot of my core memories as a child was putting myself in my mom's shoes. And just like when I was saying, me and my sister Pinky swore we would not marry the same husband because we saw what it did to them. And like putting myself in my mom's shoes, like, how do you cope with this type of life? Like, how am I going to cope with this type of life? And then also thinking, if my husband was married to his own sister, how would that make me feel? So it was just a lot of like putting myself in the shoes, because at the end of the day, I had to stomach and be okay with living polygamy and raising my kids in that polygamous lifestyle. And that was finally the breaking point, was asking myself this question: can you raise your daughters and tell them, yep, this is the kingdom of God, you need to be living polygamy, da 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 da. And at 15, I was like, I can't do that.
At 15?
Yep. I could not honestly say that I could raise my daughters as polygamous. And so I knew at 15 that I was going to leave, but I didn't know how.
Yeah.
So I didn't leave till 17. But yeah, at 15, I was like, there was all those other things happening, but the final thing that was like, I think I'm going to be leaving, was knowing that I could not raise my kids in the same environment that I was raised in.
Well, I just want to, I guess this is going to be complimenting you, but it is hard to leave a cult or high demand religion. And so many of the people who are listening who have left high demand religions or cults didn't do it until their 30s or 40s or 50s or 60s and sometimes 70s. So like, I'm standing here sort of in awe or reverence that you had the strength or the confidence or the intelligence or whatever it was to make that decision when you were 15. That's amazing.
Thank you.
It is.
I don't know what it was, because a lot of people ask, like, how did you know so young? How did you have these thoughts very young? And I think that they all have these thoughts. I think that I was not the only one, but I was the one that was just like, I knew it would be harder to stay than to leave. So I was willing. It was too uncomfortable, because at that point, 17, I have the choice where, okay, now you have to marry your cousin. This man's going forward on you. It's going to happen. They did make me go on a date with him. Like they didn't care about my choice.
Yeah.
So I got to this point, and I think a lot of people who leave these cults and religions, you do get to a point where you're very uncomfortable. And it's the choice of, can you stay in this uncomfortable, or can you go in that uncomfortable?
Yeah,
because we are
exactly.
creatures of, we like to be comfortable. And getting out of your comfort zone is something that's kind of scary. So I got to a point where I was like, well.
So you went out with him. Was he cute?
No. I had to, though. Like, my dad literally was like, I was like, I'm not going to go. I don't know what you're talking about. And then he's like, well, he's going to show up in like 10 minutes. And he took me to Panda Express, and he wore a nice tie, and it was a nice fancy dinner at Panda. And then he took me to a park and told me his direction from God, that he had a dream that he was engaged to me, and he knew that that was of God, and he had already talked to his parents about it. And I told him, I was like, well, I don't believe in polygamy, and you're my cousin. Like, I was like laughing kind of, but then he starts laughing like it's a joke, and I'm like, I'm serious. Like, I'm not down for this.
Yeah.
But because, in spite of me being honest and real and telling everyone how I really felt, they didn't care. It was like they were going to go through with the wedding anyways. And I was like, what is happening? No one seems to be listening to me.
Oh, that's so eerie.
Yeah.
That is so eerie to think about. Mm-hmm. That you're in this place of like, nope, not going to happen. Don't trust any of you.
Yep.
And they're just going to do it anyway.
And they're like, oh, yes, you will.
Yeah.
Oh, yes,
Because they weren't like, it's not like my dad was like, you will marry him, but they were doing things like in our community, if you're dancing with a man twice in one dance, then it's, you know that they're going to be getting married. That's like, only engaged people get married. Only engaged people can dance twice.
If you dance twice.
Yeah. So he was asking me to dance twice because he got permission. And I'm like, why is he asking me to dance twice? I told him that I'm not going to be marrying him.
Yes. So it was still green lighted. You felt like
Right.
it was still like
they were going to push for it.
Wow.
But I was like, I'm not going to marry him. I don't care how hard they try. I'm not going to do it. But then it got to the point where the day that I finally left, I don't know, how much time do we have maybe I'll condense it. The day that I finally left actually was because another member was leaving. He was my friend, and they were not allowing him to get his money out of the bank. Mm-hmm. He had like $40,000, $50,000 in the bank. And I had worked at the bank at this time, right? And I knew how they were about the money. By this time, I was catching on to the sleaziness of the group. I was not trusting the leadership because why are they having this guy go forward on me against my will? Why does Paul have 27 wives and he's sleeping with his siblings? This all is starting to sound. I felt like I always reference, Zoolander, Will Ferrell, when he's like, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. Like, I feel like I was the only one. Like, are you guys seeing this right now? We're worshiping this guy, and he's literally doing everything against the Bible, but he's claiming it's the Bible. So at this point, I'm like, I'm losing all my faith in everything in the group. I'm on my way out the door. I had ran away multiple times already. Police sent me back. Like I have my bags are packed. I'm just waiting to the day I'm turning 18. And I was very vocal about that. I'm getting out of here. So, and I also...
Did your parents do things to punish you?
Oh, yeah.
For disobedience?
Yeah.
Like, how did they punish you?
When I ran away the last time, I got sent back home, and I came to my room, and my room, all my stuff was gone, and my brother's stuff was in there. And I was like, where's my stuff? And my mom was like, your room's in the basement now. It was a, 6x6 concrete room with no windows, no door. You try to open the dresser, and it would hit into the bed. Like, it was the tiniest, tiny little, maybe 7x7, I don't know the exact measurement. It was teeny, and that was supposed to be where I stayed, because I was running away and I was a bad kid. Mm. And there was abuse, but I'm lucky that my family wasn't as abusive as like Daniel's family, because Daniel's family was like, I heard so many stories of abuse from there. But yeah, there was privileges taken away, and also as a teen in the order, for me and a lot of families, you're not allowed to have a cell phone. So I had a secret phone. That's how I even had contact with the outside world. But yeah, it was basically like, as strict as the religion was, if I was out of line, it just got stricter and stricter. Mm-hmm. And like I felt suffocated being in this, like I was being watched. I was being, I felt like property. I was their cattle that got out of the pen. So now I gotta go be in a more confined area. And I think that's why they were pressuring me to get married so quick, because what you'll see a lot of times is women that are feisty and are fighting back. They marry them really quick, and then they're pregnant, and now you're stuck.
Oh, so this is so horrific.
Yeah, it happens a lot. And luckily, I was fighting, and then I was still fighting after that. But my dad had said, and this burns in the back of my brain, he was like, after knowing that I was like, I will leave, I am going to leave. He said, I would rather die than leave the order, and I hope you feel the same way. And I took that as, okay, you'd rather me kill myself than leave the order. Because one, it makes you look bad. And two, I really do think deep down in his brain, my soul goes to hell if I leave. And it was his way of like, I love you. But it was so twisted. So at this point, I'm like... I was very depressed, very sad about it, because I knew I had the potential of losing my entire family if I leave. But it was too difficult to stay at this point. I knew what my future was there. I knew I was going to be married to my cousin. I was going to have about little kids and sister wives, and then die and have my kids repeat that cycle. So I was like, I am willing to take the chances of not knowing what's going to happen. So I'm at this point in my life, I'm just waiting to turn 18, because legally I can't get out because of the state of Utah.
What is it about the state of Utah?
They're very family oriented. The police,
so kids can't declare independence at 17.
You can file emancipation if you can figure out how to do that. But a lot of kids don't know the process of doing that. And it's very hidden from, like, I didn't know where was I going to go too? I didn't think that far ahead, as far as I just had to get out. That was where my brain was at. So I was running away and not really I was having plans that were falling through, because there were people that were scared to house me because the police would get called and they would be harboring a runaway. Even though I was 17, it was super weird, because I remember even telling a police officer, they're polygamous, they're trying to make me marry my cousin, like told them everything. And they're like, well, when you're 18, you can figure it out.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm like, okay, great. And I even knew kids that got abused and told the police. And there's police records showing, yes, there was abuse on this teenager. And then they sent her back home. And it's like, whatever. I really think Utah just, either a lot of the cops are getting paid off by the Kingstons, which I've heard specific names that are in cahoots with the Kingstons, but...
What police force would this have been? Like West Valley Police? Or?
I think one specifically, and I'm going to talk about him because he comes up in this story, it was West Valley. But so I'm at this point, 18 years old, or almost 18 years old, just counting down the days. I have all my stuff packed, trying to figure out what I'm going to do. And then my friend calls me and he's like, we had worked together when we were younger, and he's like, I want to leave the order. He had told me that he's
bisexual.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he's like, I want to leave and I can't get my money out. I have like $50,000 in there. I don't know what to do. He was like in a panic. And I was like, I work there. So let's come up with a plan. Let's figure out what we're going to do. And he was like, well, if you work there, what if, because they have all these underage children working there illegally, child labor laws are being broken. He's like, what if you go back there and take pictures and threaten them that you're going to turn this into the police if they don't give me my money? And I was like, this is a genius plan. My 17-year-old brain is like, this is going to work out so good. So I go in there with his phone to go take pictures, and they buzz me in the back because they trust me because I work there. And I start taking pictures of all these underage kids working like their 9-to-5 jobs. And they caught on quick. The leader's brother, I don't know who told him or what happened, but where I had slipped up was I knew at this point that I probably wouldn't see anyone ever again. So I go in the other room where I knew my friend was working, and she had gotten married, had kids, and she was having kind of a hard time. So I wanted to go kind of like say goodbye, but not say goodbye, because I wasn't going to say, hey, I'm leaving the order. I was just going to have one last talk with her. So I'm talking with her. I had the pictures on the phone. And then I just remember seeing in her eyes, she was like scared of something behind me. And I was like, as I'm turning, Paul's brother, he's like a big guy. He like comes from behind me, starts attacking me, trying to get the phone out of my hand that has the pictures on it. And I'm like, what the hell? What is going on? I'm in shock. Like, it all happened so fast. He's like pushing me out the door. He has the phone that I was taking pictures with, pushing me out the door. And he's like, I'll give the phone back to your dad. Shoves me out the door. I can't come back. He locked the door. And I'm like, and this happens in front of I want to say 5 to 10 people. So there were witnesses. And I start running back to my friend across the street, and he starts crying. He's like, Amanda, you're bleeding. And I'm like, what? And I touched my neck, and I am bleeding from the neck. He had clawed me in the throat. I had bruises and handprints all up and down me. Like, it was but I didn't feel anything because there was so much adrenaline. I was like, what's going on? My friend's crying. He's like, we need to call the police. We call the police. And luckily, this is such a crazy story. Who happens to be driving to the station to clock out for his shift was the same cop that was on the case of, so Jesse Kingston and Michelle Michaels are married, and Michelle Michaels was tending this baby, and the baby accidentally, in quotation marks, accidentally fell and died. This cop showed up to their house and knew that it was a murder. And someone did end up going to prison for that, but they claimed they claimed up and down, swore up and down that it was an accident. This cop that happened to be going back to the station was on that case. And he pulls over and he's like, what's going on? And I tell him everything. I'm like, this is what's going on. We're part of this cult. He's trying to get his money out. This person just attacked me. Trying to tell him the whole gist of it. And he cuts me off. He's like, I know the Kingstons. I was on this case where the baby died. And I know that baby was murdered. The Kingstons they're terrible people. So he tries to go in and get them to talk. And he's trying to open the door. They're holding the door shut on him, waiting for their lawyer to show up. And it was like we were waiting forever. The lawyer shows up, and then another cop shows up. So this first cop, he was good. He's like, let's take pictures, let's file reports, take this as your silver lining and get out. Like, he was a big, pivotal person in my, escape. And then this other cop pulls up, and he asks me to get in his car. which is that legal if you're a 17-year-old? Can you be alone in a cop car? I don't know. Maybe you can. But he asked me to get in his passenger seat. And he's like, so you don't want to press charges on this? His name's Jason, the guy that I was going to be pressing charges on for attacking me. You don't want to be pressing charges on this Jason guy because you're going to have to do a lot of work. And, like, you're going to have to, file all this paperwork. And, like, he's trying to explain to me all the stuff that I'm going to have to do. And all he's going to get is a slap on the wrist, maybe some jury duty or whatever. And I was like, really? He's like, yeah, you don't want to press charges. I'm 17. I don't know. I don't know what the lengths I have to go to. So I'm believing him. I'm like, oh, it's going to be really hard just to give him a slap on the wrist. I'm like, okay. I'm listening to him. Later on, I talked to other ex-members, and I told them that I forgot the name of the cop, but I could find out if I researched it. Told them the name of the cop, and they were like, yeah, he works for them. I was like, I don't know how that works. Does he get paid? Do they just call him when they're needing to get it out of a pickle? I don't know. But overnight, though, no, not even overnight, within minutes, the whole order was saying that I clawed myself in the throat. And I'm just this crazy person that's trying to hurt the order. Nobody touched me. They have camera evidence that I wasn't even touched. And I was like, show the cops then. Show the cops this camera evidence, because it did end up going on his record that he assaulted a minor. But they claimed that they had this video footage. And I was in shock that people that were my best friends were now not believing me. And I was like, there were witnesses. Witnesses saw this. And literally everybody was like, Amanda's a liar. And she clawed herself in the throat. She bruised herself. And that was something that they'd rather believe than to question the leadership. Because this is the leader's brother, right? Yeah. So after all this is happening, I call my mom and I'm like, I just want you to know that what really happened, and everyone's going to be lying to you and telling you their version. And my mom actually believed me. She was like, but I remember her exact words were, Amanda, why do you always got to go out with a bang? Why do you got to do everything with a bang? Why can't you just keep the peace? And I was like, just so you know, like, I again, don't want to be part of the order. This is it. I'm done. Because also the leader was on his side. Nobody was on my side. I was the one in the wrong. And my mom begged me to come have like a little meeting with her. So I go to the house and I'm talking with her. And she's like, I just remember my dad walking up. I made her promise that my dad wouldn't be there, and my dad showed up. And he is like, you need to go apologize to him right now. I'm like, to who? What are you talking about? You want me to apologize to him for what? Not letting him claw my neck more? Not letting him beat me more? What am I apologizing for? He's like, you do not call the police on the order. We know this. You do not call the police. We never do that. I'm like, well, I'm not sorry, and I'm not a member of the order.
Wow.
So, and I think at this point, I was too much of a risk for him to try to keep me in the order. So at this point, he was like, let her go. Just let her leave. But I also think he thought that I couldn't make it on the outside, and I'd be crying and coming, begging to come back.
Like your mom did eventually.
Yeah. And so, but I never went back.
So do they have shunning? Were you able to keep your relationship with your mom? Did you keep your relationship with your dad? Did your parents keep your siblings away from you? What was, how did you leaving the Kingston Group or the co-op affect your relationship with your parents and siblings?
It was I think I had this like little glimmer of hope that my family would be different and keep that connection with me. My family's not like the ones that cut off their kids. They wouldn't do that to me. We have too much of a bond, right? I helped raise these kids. I was the second oldest. But then on my 18th birthday, because remember I was 17, it was July 25th of 2013. My birthday is August 31st. So like about a month later, my birthday's coming up. And I had the impression that my mom was going to bring all my siblings to my birthday. And we were going to, it was Willard Farm. It was some park that we were going to have a little birthday party. And I show up and none of my siblings are there and my mom's there. And I was like, what's going on? She takes me and she whispers, because there were, like, my outside aunt was there and there were people that would probably judge my mom for saying this, but she takes me and she whispers in my ear and says, you can see your siblings when you come back to the order. And then to add salt to the wound, she gives me 2 gifts, and they're photo albums that she had been working on for a long time. They were very nice, of all of my siblings that I basically will not be able to see unless I go back to the church. So that was the worst birthday ever. I remember crying in the closet. Like, I locked myself in my apartment closet, and I was just crying. But eventually, because I was the first to like really leave, and so I got the worst of it. Yeah. You know, the first one always does get the worst of it because they're paving the way for the rest. So eventually, over time, she did start to call, and she fought my dad on it. She's like, I cannot disown my daughter. This is my daughter. You can't tell me to just forget about her. So thankfully for her, she did keep that relationship, but it's been rocky, and it has been like, you can't come home for Christmas. You're not allowed to be around the kids alone. Like, and I don't have a very good relationship with my siblings now. I feel like 2 of them specifically really think that I'm like a demon, especially for what I do now. Like, I went on Escaping Polygamy. I talk out against the group. And I think Mormons believe the same thing, where it's one thing to leave. It's another thing to blasphemy. Yep. So it's a tough spot right now with the relationship. And I'm grateful that I can have what weird relationship I do have, because so many of them are cut off when they leave. Yeah. Like, dead to me. I don't know how mothers can do that to their own daughters and sons, but like, they're trained to just boop, never existed.
So like, in the past year, how much time have you spent with your mom?
So it's been 10 years now since I left.
So you left in 2013. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And so it's evolved to, getting to see my mom a little more, and my mom's been a little more like understanding, and there's been a few breakthrough talks that we've had, but I honestly think I've only seen my mom maybe 3 times this year. Okay. But that's better than what it could have been. I'm not like trying to complain too much, but I wish that religion didn't ruin the entire relationship, right? Because we were close at one point. I feel like I had a really deep bond with my mom at one point. But
and how many minutes do you need to leave? I'm just a time check really quick. I know,
I'm like, we can go for 20 more minutes.
20 more minutes? Okay. So,
can I just say, you have lived through so much. And I think really had to make decisions as a young person with such great cost, like so many, and reality, like living in this constant place of like checking your reality. Like, am I crazy, like you were saying? Yeah. Like, you watching something and having an experience, and then having men or, the conditioning be like, that is not what you saw. Yeah.
It's constant gaslighting. And I do feel like it affected, sadly, a lot of my ex-member life. Because if I didn't do therapy, I don't think that I would be here today. You know what I mean?
I can imagine why.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So let's finish by talking about Reconstruction. So you're 18, you're raised in a cult, a polygamous cult. How do you, and then you're effectively cut off from your parents and siblings. Mm-hmm. Did you crash? And whether you crashed or not, how have you rebuilt?
Yeah, I think that going through the deconstruction was a really scary, scary part of my life. I almost became Mormon because it was so familiar. Mm-hmm. There was this piece of me when I left that was like, I need to be doing something with my Sundays. I need to be worshiping the Lord. I felt like God was, I still had a belief in God. I just didn't believe in the God that because I just had this point of my life where I was like, if God's like what you guys say, I don't want to go there.
No Kingston God.
Exactly.
You don't believe in Kingston God.
He sounds like Satan to me. He sounds like a hater.
And there's that urge to like replace it. Yeah. What can I replace it with?
It really was. And it was so like scary to me to think of no God. So I was gravitating towards, I had my adopted family at this time. They knew the situation. They were Mormon. That was the Mormon friend that I met in Wasatch Junior High. Mm. Her family knew what was going on. And
did you live with them?
Yeah. They're like, we're taking you in. Oh, wow. We're going to take care of you. They were so good about not pressuring me to go to church. They didn't pressure me to like do things that were going to make me be triggered again. But they did ask, would you be comfortable with missionaries coming over? Is this something that you would like? We as a family usually do these things, but you don't have to, but you are a part of the family if you would like to. So I agreed to see missionaries, and I really liked the idea until I started doing research on Joseph Smith. And I was like, it's the same thing. So I
Critical thinking, though.
Yeah, I couldn't join because I was like, this is the same thing. And then I got really depressed because I was like, there's nothing then. We don't exist. There's no point to anything. And I remember I was jogging in my adoptive family's neighborhood.
And this is here on the east side?
Yep, Wasatch area. And I was thinking in depth about what I believed in. And I just fell down and like bawled on the trail. Like, there is nothing. Everything that I have believed in has been a lie, and there is no purpose. And this lasted for a good week of like no sense of belonging, or like I lost my entire community. Yeah. I lost everything that I ever believed in. It was all a lie. And now who even am I? And I had to slowly rebuild that and come to terms with, okay, well, you've had certain experiences that made you believe these certain core beliefs, and those beliefs are because someone told you to believe them. So it was really tough. And because of my beliefs of the order, I wanted to get married. So I got married at 18, and I did still live honestly, I was like an outside order member because I didn't swear, I didn't drink. I still was very much living the ABC order standards. I just didn't live the polygamy. I didn't want to live the marry your brother thing.
And was your husband religious?
He had escaped too, but he was of the Hansen family. And my dad knew that I wanted to marry him, but he was not Kingston. And I was destined to marry a Kingston. So we left together. But the sad part about that whole thing is he still had this weird, almost like, well, Paul never did anything wrong to me, and Paul could still be a good person. And I remember being like, he is sleeping with his sisters and his nieces and 27 women in the name of the Lord. Mm-hmm. Like, let that digest right now. So a lot of our marriage was me being like, stop. Like, We're not in the order anymore. But I also had those tendencies to be like, we need to be going to church. Yes. We need to be doing something.
Yep.
So it was a really hard relationship to have. And I never felt safe enough to have kids with him because of his belief on gays, his belief on, like, I just didn't want to have kids with someone who was going to repeat the cycle.
What did he believe about gays?
That it was wrong. That's what he would say. Mm-hmm. I don't like saying too much about him, just because I think this is...
Well, what did the Kingstons believe about gays? Let's put it that way.
Right. And with him, like, that's the version of him I knew. He's probably changed, hopefully grown. Let's hope. Mm-hmm. But, the Kingstons definitely believe that being gay is a sin. They had their own forms of conversion therapy. There were married men that were gay that were going to conversion therapy. It was a very sinful thing. So to be married, though, and leave this cult and fight so hard to get out and then end up with someone who's going to instill the same beliefs on my kids, I was I can't do this. So I finally filed for divorce.
How long were you married?
7 years.
And what'd you guys do work or education-wise? Did you go to school? Did he go to school? Where'd you work?
I worked so many different jobs. It was like an order wife, happy wifey. Like, I followed him around. I did construction with him. Like, I just kind of let him live his life and put my life on hold for a little bit. Here in the Valley? No, there's A&I don't know how much you want to know this, but it's ex-members of the order had their own construction business where they would go around the West Coast and we'd go to Oregon, Washington, Arizona, and I would follow him around and eventually started working with him.
So you were doing construction?
Yeah, I was doing flooring.
Oh, wow.
And then I got to a point where I was like, this is not for me. This is not what I want to be doing. I got back into therapy and was able to... I kind of just was doing jobs here and there. And then I did have Escaping Polygamy. Escaping Polygamy reached out to me and wanted me to be part of the show, and that was one of my biggest things. Mm-hmm. And
what year was that about?
That was when my wedding is on Escaping Polygamy.
Oh.
Yeah, so I got married the year after leaving. So I left 2013, got married May of 2014, and they aired it on Escaping Polygamy. They told the whole story. But that was little 18-year-old Amanda doing what was best for, what I thought was best for me, right?
And it sounds like too kind of unprocessed.
Oh yeah.
And what happens when,
right,
you want to make a break from something, but also it's unprocessed in your mind, is that you tend to repeat or go to, again, what's familiar or your default or remnants of conditioning.
It's so true. And I like to look at how many people have left and jumped right into a healthy relationship. I can't count anyone that have left a cult and jumped straight into a healthy relationship, because you don't have the skills, the healthy skills. All you know is, this is what I did. All I know is what I don't want, but I don't know what is healthy.
Yeah,
it's like,
right. What
exactly.
it looks like.
It's like having a heart surgeon know what not to do, but not know what to do. Mm-hmm. You're going to mess it up. And so I walked into this marriage thinking that, all you need is love, but that's not, in reality, all you need is love is not true. You need to have healthy communication. You need to be able to understand each other and see where each other's coming from. And we just got to a point where I was doing a lot of therapy, and I wanted him to go to therapy with me, but he didn't think that it was something he needed. I found a lot of value in it. And then eventually we were just on two completely different places. And so I filed for divorce in 2021, beginning of 2021.
That's 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yep. And then literally moved to Vegas, and I got out of Utah. I was like, I'm done living this life. Like I had never drank before, had never, no tattoos. No, it was very strict. And he was the head of the house type thing. Yeah. It felt like coming from a cult and coming from a cage, going into a little bigger cage.
Yeah.
And then divorcing felt like, wow. It was like, now I get to know who Amanda really is without the fear of, what's he going to think? What's God going to think? You know what I mean?
But Vegas is crazy town, right?
Oh, yeah. And I don't know if that was the best idea.
I was going to say, that's like the wide, wide world.
Yeah. So here I come from this very strict, Utah. It's illegal to drink, basically, where you go to Vegas and it's like illegal to be sober over there. Yeah. And everyone I knew had some kind of addiction. And I was like, is this what the world is now? Is this the real life? So I dove into just becoming friends with people out there and learning really quick, which thank God that I learned fast to the point where I realized, okay, I don't want to live in Vegas. I know what my values are.
So you would date men, I assume, as a single woman.
Yep. In Vegas.
I
had some terrible experiences, that's for sure. But I learned from them.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And so I moved out of Vegas, and I feel like I'm in a more healthy place now. I love therapy, and I thank God that I did decide to do therapy and commit to that.
What were your jobs in Vegas before we talk about therapy? What did you do for work?
I was a cocktail waitress. Remember I was telling you that, right? I was a cocktail waitress, so it was just like, and then you meet the worst kind of guy. Sorry, not to like generalize, but the guy I dated for the longest in Vegas was living with a girlfriend the whole time, and I had no idea. So basically, I was forced to live polygamy.
More secrecy.
Yeah, and so
dishonesty.
And reality things where you think it's one way, but you're being told it's another way.
Oh, yeah.
Like that's a repeat. Yeah,
exactly. I was seeing how he would act around women. And I was like, is this normal? I feel like it's flirty that what he's doing, but maybe this is normal. I don't want to be like, thinking he's trying to live polygamy. Because I did have my therapist at the time. The reason I stayed with him so long was because my therapist was like, well, you don't want to be going through his phone. I think that you're just having these thoughts because you came from a polygamous cult. And you think that all men are like that. But no, my gut was right. So I've struggled with this trusting myself thing, and I feel like I finally found it right now. Yeah. I'm like, okay, I'm going to forever trust my gut now because I was right. Went through his phone, and there it was. The evidence was right there, and I had been wasting so much of my time. But so I think a lot of people go through that, like not knowing what's normal, getting in unhealthy relationships, trying to figure out what you want, where your core beliefs and values are in that life of relationships. And then finally after that, I feel like I've made peace with where I'm at to an extent.
So these 4 years on a TV show, did you think about becoming a TV star? Like, was that financially useful? Did you think about making a career out of being an advocate for ex-fundamentalists or ex-cult people? How did, like, I would assume you're on TV for 4 years you're going to become rich and famous. And that's just,
that's where your brain goes.
Yeah.
I honestly, whenever I talk about this, I feel like I sound so crazy. But when I was 15 in the order and I was having these moments of questioning myself and feeling like I'm taking crazy pills, there was multiple moments where I knew I was going to be talking about the order on TV.
Oh, yeah.
I knew I was going to be exposing them as soon as I got out, which is crazy. At the time, I'm like, is this God telling me what my calling is?
That the universe worked out that way.
Yeah, literally the year I left, I got contacted by producers to share my story on Escaping Polygamy. I wasn't originally a part of the plan of Escaping Polygamy. And then I was signed on for 4 years. And I've since then been continuing the advocacy because I feel like that's what feels right for me, because there's so many women there that I know they're thinking the same thing. I know they want to say these things, but they are being silenced.
And you only answer this if you're comfortable, but do you make decent money being on 4 years on a TV program or not?
On Escaping Polygamy?
Yeah.
No, I don't think documentaries make that much, do they?
So you made a little bit, but not much.
Not enough to really, live well off of.
So
but I was happy to do it.
Subsistence living.
Yeah. I would do it all over again because
of the advocacy.
Yeah.
Not because you made good money.
No.
I'm curious about the experience you had. I don't know if I haven't watched the show, but if you're going back into the communities where you experienced kind of some of the things that you experienced, was it healing? Was it empowering? Was it traumatizing?
Was it dangerous?
What was your actual experience, even psychologically, with it?
Oh, yeah. It's definitely going back into the order territory was a psychological mind, just roller coaster, because all these people that were helping leave the order are family. And three of them were my mom and my two siblings. 3 of the escapes was my own direct family.
Wow.
And it was very, just a lot of guilt and shame, actually, when I was helping my younger sister, because my dad had told me a dream that I was going to basically I was burning and getting cremated, and my sister was getting in the cremation burning with me. And that's like a spiritual death. And he starts crying and he's like, I'm not going to let you take her with you. And here I am on national television, taking her with me, having his direction come true, right? So I remember feeling a lot of guilt and shame that all of this is going to be, but then I had to fight that and be like, that's not true. These are just the things that these crazy people believe. I had to always talk to myself and be my own best friend, because otherwise I was going to fall into that traumatic, guilt, shame-filled version of myself.
Mm-hmm.
And did you ever fear for your life that it was dangerous? Did the Kingston Church view you as their biggest enemy? This is a national TV show. You're trying to not just take people out, but take people out on national television.
Yeah, they definitely don't like me. But I also believe that the cameras brought so much safety. They were not willing to do anything scary in front of those cameras. Once those cameras were on, we were protected. But we also had bodyguards. The one time I got really scared was actually in the FLDS, going down to the creek, because this is unfamiliar territory. And then we get pulled over, and these cops with guns, police officers, are also in the group. Yeah. So I'm freaking out. They can do whatever they want. That was the scariest for me, because it was unfamiliar. The order, I knew their habits. I knew I was one of them. So I felt familiar and comfortable with this. It was more of just the guilt, shame, that trauma that comes with it, and my own story coming up. FLDS was like, what the hell's going to happen to us? We're not going to get out of here alive. There was one time where I felt that way. I got a little freaked out. But it was just because it was unfamiliar territory.
Okay. And why did it end? Or why isn't it still going?
The show? Yeah. So they had wanted us to have 10 escapes per season. And I was like, it's one thing to have an escape, and it's another thing to have someone be willing to escape on camera. So we were like, we can't give you 10 escapes. I think the network just really wanted more escapes and focusing on escapes. And we were like, we can't predict how many escapes we can get per year.
Wow. It's almost like you're producing escapes.
Yeah.
Wow.
I would try to tell them, I know this person has been talking to me. I know this person, but I'm not going to. that's where it got sad, because a lot of times I was like, I don't want people to think I'm pressuring them into being exploited. You know what I mean? So I tried to be very much like, this person, we're not talking to this person because they don't want to be on TV.
Yeah.
Ooh,
I
that's
think,
tricky.
I think I'm struck by how little participants in documentaries TV documentaries make, but I don't think documentaries make a lot of, like those who make the movies, I don't think they make a lot of money either. So it's just a hard business overall.
Really?
I mean, maybe the networks make a lot of money.
Like Netflix.
But my friend Tyler Meeson, and they did Murder Among the Mormons, and that was one of Netflix's top documentaries for a while. I know if you did it hourly, working over 3 years, and all the work they put into it, it's not great money. So someone may be making money, but it's not the
ones doing the work.
producers, and it's certainly not the participants.
Mm-hmm.
Margie, you had a question.
Yeah, it is just so clear to me how effortful you've been with how much you've been through. And we were talking earlier, and you had mentioned kind of some things that have been healing for you or really key in rebuilding, and therapy being one of those things. What are some other things that you would want to kind of mention or talk about quickly that have really been key for you, kind of coming back to yourself or creating a life for yourself so far?
I definitely think that a big part of how I was able to get where I'm at now is being able to have a sense of community out here, which I was lucky enough to have 3 of my siblings, from my mom's family, leave with me, and we kind of have been fighting the world together out here.
So of the 10, 4 have left?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
4 total of my mom's kids have left.
Wow.
And we've kind of just hung.
And they're here in in the valley?
No.
Oh, okay.
So we all moved out of Utah together, and we eventually want to all be in the same state together. We really are super close, and we've been able to rely on each other for emotional support, because we all are going through the same thing. We don't have a connection to our dad, same thing with our mom. We spend Christmases together.
Oh, that's so significant.
Yeah. But therapy, I think, has been one of the biggest things. And I was offered it for free. I don't think I would have had therapy if it weren't for Holding Out Help. It's a foundation that helps with, people that come out of these polygamous cults.
Yeah.
And they helped me to get free therapy.
This is Tanya from Holding Out Help, right?
You know them?
I talked to Tanya today. Yeah.
Okay, so you do? Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
Keep going.
I feel like that is so huge too.
No, yeah.
Yeah. So they gave me free therapy. They now have options for people to stay at. Like, they have a women's home, they have a men's home, and then they gave me the help to apply to jobs, because how do I apply to a job? I don't even know the first thing about that, because I was just given my jobs at my cult.
Right.
So having that kind of help was really important. And so every time someone's trying to leave the order and they need a place to go, I always reference that, because that's...
So it's Holding Out Help. It's a Utah nonprofit.
Yes.
Tanya,
and I know multiple people who stay at that home. It's like a halfway home. But yeah, community, sense of community, the help. It's amazing how many people now are out of this cult, and how many of us should be getting to know each other and rebuilding that, what we've lost. So that's why I try to do these Malibu retreats now. They're women retreats where we have ex-FLDS members, ex-order members. We all get together in California, and we kind of try to rebuild the relationships that we lost. Because a lot of us, when someone leaves, they're cut off. So then we have people who have left years ago, and now a fresh person who leaves gets to rebuild that relationship with the person they weren't allowed to be with.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's Tanya Toole with Holding Out Help.
Oh yeah, with Holding Out Help, that one. Yeah. But then the Malibu retreat is actually something that I fund. Yeah. Well, I get it with my channel following. If anyone's interested in supporting that Malibu fund, it's just a bunch of ex-members. We have FLDS members, and we have order members who we all come together and we do this retreat. But I have mugs that I sell on my website, and all of the profits of those mugs goes towards this retreat.
And I want to come back to that, but really quickly, Margie asked you therapy,
community,
finding friends and community. Any other big little secret tips for working out of a high demand religion cult?
The resources, the community, and therapy. And I think honestly, this is a form of therapy, but diary entries, journal entries, and doing check-ins with yourself, and it allows you to trust yourself and know yourself. To have that relationship with yourself is way more important than having a relationship with anyone else. Because that's when I started to realize, oh my gosh, the reason why I'm attracting so many unhealthy people is because I'm unhealthy myself. So once you can become healthy within yourself, you can attract healthy relationships.
I love that so much.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so you have a YouTube channel. I know you have to go. Plug the heck out of everything. What do you cover on your YouTube channel?
Okay,
How do people cover it? What other things do you want people to know so that they can support the work you do?
Yes, so we have my YouTube channel is Amanda Rae. If you want to go over there,
R-A-E.
Yeah, R-A-E. I explain all of the stuff we talked about, but in depth with like the leadership, and like we even talk about Cody Brown. It's fun over there. We go live every Sunday, and then
you interview ex-Kingston people, but also just ex-fundamentalists of all types.
I've interviewed AUB. I've interviewed...
That's Apostolic United Brethren, which is the all-red group, right?
Yep.
Okay.
The one Cody Brown came from. But I also do videos where I watch Sister Wives and I kind of review it and talk about it, and talk about my own experience in correlation with what they are showing. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff and asking me questions on the live streams, go over to my YouTube channel. I also have an Instagram, Amanda Rae Grants. I also have, I just want to reference two charities. So we have Holding Out Hope for people who are interested in helping. And then we also have Hope After Polygamy, who is a charity that helps funding the school because a lot of people will leave and they won't even have a GED. People will leave FLDS and they don't even have a second grade education, right? So Hope After Polygamy is one that's like a newer foundation, but it's run by a lot of ex-members. So I just wanted to make sure people know there's plenty of resources. I want to let people know where they can donate, but also people who are watching who I know there's going to be a lot of people in the groups that don't know what resources they can have when they leave. There's a lot. So, I mean, in all my videos, I have them linked down below. I don't know if you'll have any linked down below, but
yeah, we will.
I think it's really good and important to just yell it out to all these members because they all think that they are trapped and they don't have to be trapped.
How can people financially support you as a creator?
Watch my YouTube channel and go to justcultytings.com and buy my art.
Do you have like a Patreon or a donor box or a Venmo or a PayPal?
I do have Patreon.
If people want to send you money, how do people send you money?
I feel so uncomfortable doing that.
Okay, we're going to fix that. So right now, do you have a Venmo or a PayPal you can mention?
I might have a PayPal, but I always feel uncomfortable because I feel like a cult leader is asking for money, and I don't like it. Okay. It feels weird.
I totally get that. And creators, if they don't get support, they can't keep being an advocate. So do you have an email tied to a PayPal that you can give people?
I do. I think I do have a PayPal.
Well, we want you to feel comfortable. Yeah. So if that's something
I never want someone to feel like I'm asking for money, but I know that it would definitely help to support.
You can also share Venmo
cause.
If you want.
I don't know if I have Venmo.
Okay. Well, I'll
send it to you if you want to. Okay, if you want to post it. But.
We'll put it in the links. How people can financially support you through PayPal, and I would encourage you not to, step out of my lane, but I would encourage you to create a way for your listeners and viewers who benefit from your content to support you financially, aside from the ad revenue, because there are donors out there that want to support you, that believe in you, that care about you, and then they want to see you keep doing the work you do. And that's our core financial support doesn't come from ad revenue. Ad revenue is like right now a third of what how we support ourselves. It's primarily through the generous donations of people who just become monthly donors. They go to mormonstories.org, they click on the donate button, they become a monthly donor, and that's what allows us to hire staff, to have these facilities. And, I just would encourage you to consider that.
Right. Yeah. I've been told this before too, and I need to just get over this thing. I think it is a cult belief.
Isn't it amazing that the cult makes billions,
right?
But they teach its members that it's evil to even just support yourself financially.
Yeah.
Isn't that ironic?
There's guilt and shame somehow tied to me, like taking money from people. Because even though my whole life, it made sense to give all of my to the kingdom of God
for free.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So donors and listeners, By the time you're watching this, we will have either a Venmo or a PayPal, some way for you to support Amanda financially. And I'm going to ask you all to please subscribe to her channel, buy her merch, but also please make donations to her directly as a creator, because you're doing important work.
And you're beginning now a new life, and you've created a business for yourself that takes time and energy from you. So we see you. I feel so lucky to have witnessed you here today and heard your story. Be here.
I'm glad that, thank you guys for having me. This has been a good experience for sure.
Our pleasure. All right. So Amanda Rae, Amanda R-A-E is the YouTube channel. Amanda, we're so happy you came, and maybe we'll have you on again as a panelist or commentator, because your story is inspiring. You are inspiring.
You are.
Thank
and
you.
as a member of the community, I want to thank you for the advocacy work you do to help people through hard stuff.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for helping me share the story.
Yeah. And Margie, it's always great to have you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Okay. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today on Mormon Stories. You can also subscribe to the Mormon Stories podcast channel. And we thank our monthly donors. And if you want to become a supporter of us as well, we need your support. We rely on your support to keep doing what we're doing. So you can go to mormonstories.org, click on the donate button, become a monthly donor. And that's how we continue. Thanks for your support. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're on TikTok. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. And we appreciate it. We've got a lot of good episodes and content coming up. So stay tuned. Big thanks to Julia and Maven and Gerardo and all the people at the Open Stories Foundation, including our board, Clinton Carey, that make all this possible. So thanks to Margie. And be kind to each other. Be good to each other. And we'll see you all again soon on another episode of Mormon Stories Podcast. Take care.